Chapter 492. Could it be that I really made a mistake? That student is really a genius stronger than Mingxiu and Feng Qiuyan? Jun Tingyu was already beginning to doubt himself. He could tell that Mingxiu and Feng Qiuyan's words were filled with admiration for Zhou. The feelings that came from the bottom of their hearts couldn't be faked, so it was impossible for them to be perfunctory. However, Jun Tingyu couldn't believe that the fellow who was gaming could be better than Mingxiu and Feng Qiuyan. Feng Qiuyan had already advanced to the epic stage at such a young age. It was a rare occurrence, but he admired Zhou, who was the same age as him, like a student worshipping his teacher. He couldn't imagine what kind of person Zhou was. Is there really such a genius in the world? Jun Tingyu looked at Zhou with mixed emotions. Li Mingcan and company also looked at Zhou and couldn't help but gulp. Even Feng Qiuyan admitted that he wasn't as good as him. It was even more difficult for them to imagine what kind of genius he was. Teacher, does this action of playing games have a deeper meaning? Li Mingcan began to doubt his previous judgment. Although he knew that it wasn't good to question Jun Tingyu, he couldn't help but ask. Jun Tingyu was now somewhat apprehensive. He carefully observed Zhou, who was gaming, and felt that he was indeed extraordinary. His expression was calm and his temperament was outstanding. Although he was gaming, he gave off an aura that didn't seem to be fazed even if the sky collapsed. It seemed that he was indeed different from the masses. In fact, this was all Jun Tingyu's psychological effect. Although Zhou wasn't simply gaming, from his appearance, he looked no different from an ordinary person gaming. It would be a miracle if he could see that he wasn't fazed even if the sky collapsed. While Zhou was gaming, his phone suddenly rang. It was the phone he usually used. When he heard the voice of the message, Zhou immediately jolted. This was because he had specially set this sound. Only when the Dharch sent a message would it sound. Zhou didn't dare delay as he hurriedly took out another phone from his pocket. Indeed, he saw a message from the Dharch. It's been so long, but I still haven't seen a single thing I want. I think you don't take this Thearka's matter to heart. I really should punish you. Otherwise, you will think that this Dharch only knows how to scare people. When Zhou saw this message, he immediately broke out into a cold sweat. He was afraid of death, and he was even more afraid that the Dharch would sever his limbs. That would be terrible. The Dharch, I've been being pursued recently, so I didn't have the time to buy those equipment for you. Don't worry, I'll immediately think of a way to buy them for you. Even if I have to sell everything I have, I'll definitely buy them for you. Zhou had too many things to do recently, so he had really forgotten about this matter. It's too late, the Dharch replied. Zhou hurriedly tried to think of a way to explain. He was really afraid that the Dharch would make a wish to have all his limbs severed. It was a loss for a good young man to have his limbs severed because of a few crappy instruments. However, no matter how he explained, the Dharch didn't reply. This made Zhou feel extremely uneasy. When Jun Tingyu saw Zhou using his phone to communicate with the Dharch, his eyes lit up. He shouted excitedly, "Genius! This person is really a genius!" Li Mingcan and company were given a fright. Li Mingcan hurriedly asked, "Elder Jun, did you discover something?" Jun Tingyu said, "I'm getting old. I really made a mistake previously. This young man is really a peerless genius. It's no wonder even geniuses like Mingxiu and Feng Qiuyan admire him so much." "Elder Jun, how did you tell? Tell us." Li Mingsan's heart itched when he heard that. Jun Tingyu pointed at Zhou, who was sending messages on his phone, and said, "The wordless monument has a power that targets the human heart. Even a top epic expert will focus on doing what they want to do after being affected by the wordless monument's power. Before they are exhausted, they definitely won't be distracted, nor can they be distracted. However, look at him. When he's gaming, he can actually use another phone to constantly type and send messages. This means that his mind isn't completely affected by the wordless monument's power. To be able to maintain his will under the wordless monument's power, this person's willpower is simply unheard of. Even a saint is only SOSO. To have such a powerful willpower, this person must be extraordinary. No wonder. No wonder. The more Jun Tingyu looked at Zhou, the more he felt that he was different. The more he looked at him, the more he felt that his temperament was outstanding. He actually had the demeanor of an aristocrat, making it impossible for him to treat Zhou as a junior. How could Zhou have known that Jun Tingyu would decipher so many things? As he had cultivated the wordless monument's essence energy art, he wasn't affected at all. There was no need for him to use his willpower to resist the wordless monument's power. However, there was one thing that Jun Tingyu was right about. Zhou's willpower was indeed extraordinary. Zhou sent several messages, but the Dharch didn't reply. He knew that this matter was probably going to blow up. He felt that it wasn't appropriate for him to continue staying here. He had to quickly think of a way to protect himself and resist the Thearcha's impending rage. In front of so many people, it wasn't appropriate for him to make a big fuss. He had to quickly find a place without anyone around. Zhou put away his phone and stood up. Seeing that Li Xian and company were still immersed in their own world, he walked out and said to the tutor who was guarding them, "Tutor, there are some matters in the academy. I need to return first." After obtaining the tutor's approval, Zhou was about to leave the mountain when he was blocked by Jun Tingyu. "I'm Jun Tingyu from the Imperial Capital College. I wonder if you have the time to chat with me?" Jun Tingyu didn't treat Zhou as a student and treated him as an equal. "I'm really sorry. I have urgent matters to attend to and need to return to school. Let's chat again if there's a chance in the future." Zhou turned around and left. "Why is this person so rude?" Li Mingcan said. However, Jun Tingyu thought nothing of it. Instead, he felt that Zhou was extraordinary. After some thought, he said, "Geniuses all have personalities. Zhou is indeed not an ordinary person. This is understandable. I'll visit him at Sunset College tomorrow." Just as Li Mingcan was about to say something, he suddenly saw an antelope and a golden eagle-like bird descend from Mount Laojun. The antelope followed behind Zhou, and the bird circled above his head as though it was protecting him. Li Mingcan, Jun Tingyu, and company were dumbfounded. The animals on Mount Laojun were no ordinary creatures. With Mount Laojun's protection, they could be said to be pets in the backyard of a saint. They had actually taken the initiative to follow Zhou down the mountain. They had never heard of such a thing and found it unbelievable. Zhou went all the way down Mount Laojun and headed straight for the academy. He felt uneasy along the way, unsure how the Dharch would deal with him. Chapter 493. Zhou returned to school in trepidation all the way until he returned to his dorm. Nothing happened. Zhou didn't dare be careless. He summoned all the companion beasts he could use and didn't sleep in his bedroom. He stayed in the living room and felt safer with the antelope and chick by his side. It was strange. Ever since he returned from Mount Laojun, the chick that was as fat as a duck had slimmed down again. It looked as energetic as when it was thin. Zhou wasn't in the mood to study why the chick had slimmed down in the blink of an eye. He sat on the sofa and placed a few notebooks beside him as he drew substitute talismans page by page. This was a life-saving item. If he could get it out, he might be able to save his life even if the Dharch wanted to deal with him. After drawing one after another, the success rate of drawing a substitute talisman was really low. However, as the saying goes, practice makes perfect. As Zhou drew more, he gradually got the hang of it. Although this was a skill obtained from the primordial energy skill crystal, the one who drew the talisman was still Zhou himself. Zhou realized that when drawing talismans, if he only used his primordial energy to draw the talisman according to the drawing method, the success rate was pitifully low. The lines of the substitute talisman seemed to contain some kind of profundity. Zhou pondered over the strangeness of the lines and gradually gained something. This substitute talisman needs to be drawn with my own primordial energy. The lines drawn also contain some kind of mystical power related to me. It looks like drawing talismans, but it's actually a form of understanding of myself. At the same time, it's also a way to communicate with external objects, Zhou thought as he drew. Zhou drew all day and all night. By the next morning, he had lost count of how many substitute talismans he had drawn. After all, he had almost used up all the thick diaries. Finally, he managed to draw one. This also meant that Zhou had almost infinite primordial energy to use. If it were anyone else, they probably wouldn't be able to draw so many times in a month or two. Although the substitute talisman is useful, it's too difficult to draw one. It's really not easy to get one. Zhou held the drawn substitute talisman and felt a little excited. With this talisman, it was equivalent to having an additional life. Unfortunately, the substitute talisman could only be used by himself. This was because the substitute talisman Zhou drew was closely related to him. It could only help him fend off disasters. As for what kind of calamity a substitute talisman could withstand, Zhou wasn't too sure. Although drawing talismans wasn't easy, Zhou had an unexpected harvest. Drawing talismans required him to sense the connection between himself and external objects. During this period, Zhou constantly used the Tao Sutra, resulting in him gaining some insight into the Tao Sutra. The Tao follows nature. If I want the Tao Sutra to condense a life soul, I'll probably have to work hard on heaven-man unity, Zhou thought to himself. Even though it was only a small clue, as long as there was a direction, there was a possibility. He wouldn't be as blind as before. Zhou didn't have the time to enjoy nature. He put away the substitute talisman he had drawn and lay in bed to sleep. Drawing the substitute talisman consumed both yuan qi and energy. After drawing it for so long, he was already exhausted. Furthermore, he had yet to recover from his serious injuries. Now that he had the protection of the substitute talisman, he could finally sleep in peace. He slept soundly. Due to his exhaustion, Zhou slept very soundly. He was only woken up when the doorbell rang. "Who is this?" Zhou stretched his back and was about to ask. "Meow." However, the sound Zhou made gave him a fright as he hurriedly covered his mouth with his hand. However, when he stretched out his hand to take a look, Zhou was instantly dumbfounded. It wasn't a hand but a furry claw. The nails on the claw were like hooks. Where the palm should have been, it had turned into a pink ball of flesh that resembled a plum blossom. "What's wrong with me?" Zhou was alarmed. He wanted to stand up and size himself up, but he quickly realized that his body had become extremely strange. Furthermore, there was a problem with his vision. The furniture around him had become very large. The clothes he had worn yesterday were at his feet. They looked extremely large, as though they were worn by a giant. Zhou immediately had an ominous feeling. He hurriedly ran to the mirror and looked at himself. Meow. Looking at the black and white cat in the mirror, Zhou was dumbfounded. He covered his mouth in horror with both hands, and the kitten in the mirror did the same action. At the dormitory's entrance, a tutor pressed the doorbell a few more times, but no one opened the door. Hence, he apologized to the old man beside him. "Elder June, I'm really sorry. It looks like he's gone out." June Tingyu was very disappointed. In order to visit Zhou at Sunset College, he had gone to the trouble of finding a friend at Sunset College, but Zhou wasn't around. "It's fine. I'll come again next time." June Tingyu could only return in disappointment. In the dormitory, Zhou was about to explode from anxiety. He twisted his body and made all sorts of postures. He even tried to curl his tail. All he wanted was to prove that the kitten in the mirror wasn't him. Unfortunately, no matter what he did, the little tabby cat in the mirror did the exact same thing. What was even more terrifying was that Zhou tried to use his essence energy art or summon his companion beasts, but there was no reaction. The Tharch. It must be the Thearcha's doing. Damn it. I have a substitute talisman on me. How could there be a problem? Zhouwen ran to his pile of clothes and used his claws to pull at them a few times. He realized that the substitute talisman was in his clothes. It was untouched and had no effect at all. Don't tell me I've turned into a cat just like that? Zhouwen hurriedly took out his phone. Thankfully, it wasn't just a fingerprint unlock. He could also unlock it with a picture. Otherwise, Zhouwen wouldn't even be able to open his phone. He unlocked his phone and immediately sent a message to the Tharch. The Tharch, how am I to buy those instruments for you after you turn me into this? Zhouwen knew that he could only use benefits to move the Tharch. Begging for mercy was probably useless. I have plenty of ways to get someone to deliver things. Who said I have to get you to buy them? As for you, you have to be punished. The Tharch finally replied. Zhouwen sent a few more messages, hoping to move the Tharch and quickly return to human form. However, the news sank into the sea. The Tharch didn't reply to his messages at all, as though she was determined to make him a cat for life. Chapter 494. What should I do? Is there any way to restore my human body? Zhouwen tried all sorts of methods, but he was only a cat now. His body structure was completely different from before. He couldn't use the primordial energy art and various companion beasts he had cultivated in the past, so what other solutions could he think of? The antelope and chick looked at him with interest. The antelope even used its hooves to rub his head as though it was comforting him, but Zhouwen could tell from its eyes that it was trying its best to hold back its laughter. The chick hopped around him and stuck to his side as though it wanted to compete with him to see who was taller. However, when the chick stood up, it was really a little taller than Zhouwen, who was on all fours. No, I have to think of a way to restore my human body. Zhouwen moved and used his claws to hide his phone and the bracelet embedded with the chaos bead before walking towards the dormitory door. Looking at the world from a cat's perspective, his perspective was clearly much lower. Even the dormitory door looked very big in his eyes. Zhouwen leaped up, hoping to grab the handle and unlock the door. In the past, he only needed to jump up to such a height, but now, his claws had reached their limit. He was still quite a distance away from the door handle before his body fell. Zhouwen landed on the ground and used all his strength to jump up again. Only then did he jump up and open the door handle. Although he was used to walking on 2 feet, it would probably be very bad if the other students and tutors in school saw a cat walking on 2 hind legs. Therefore, Zhouwen could only lie on the ground and walk like a cat. Although there was no problem with a cat walking like this, Zhouwen found it very awkward. After leaving the door, Zhouwen planned on heading to the principal's office. His current situation was probably impossible for ordinary people to resolve, so he wanted to find Sunset College's principal, Leng Zongjing. He heard that Leng Zongjing was good at cracking illusions, so Zhouwen felt that it was impossible for him to transform into a cat. Perhaps it was just an illusion. Zhouwen thought to himself, I'm a student of the college after all. Leng Zongjing won't leave me in the lurch, right? However, Zhouwen didn't have any confidence that Leng Zongjing could turn him back into a human. He only wanted to try his luck. Just as he walked into the yard, Zhouwen heard the door to the neighboring building open. He hurriedly ducked into the grass and hid there as he peeked at the neighboring yard through the peephole. Indeed, Wang Lu walked out with 2 trash bags in her hand. It looked like she was going to throw the trash. Zhouwen didn't want anyone who knew him to know that he had become a cat. Be it Li Xian or Wang Lu, they would definitely mock him for a long time. Furthermore, as a cat, he didn't have any clothes on him. Although he had fur, he would still feel uncomfortable if someone he knew saw him. Therefore, he had no intention of contacting Li Xian and company for the time being. Although Zhouwen knew that Wang Lu probably couldn't recognize him as a kitten, it was better to be careful just in case. After Wang Lu left, Zhouwen planned on leaving in another direction. He planned on taking a detour to the principal's office from the old school district behind Four Seasons Garden to prevent himself from encountering so many students and tutors. Although he had become a cat, he wasn't wearing any clothes. Zhouwen still couldn't stand the gazes of others. The yard's door was locked from the inside. Although Zhouwen could jump up and open the door, it would be too eye-catching. Looking at the yard's wooden fence and his body, Zhouwen felt that it wouldn't be difficult for him to crawl out with his current body. Although he looked a little plump, most of it was likely fur. Zhouwen came to the wooden fence and chose a relatively large gap before sticking his head out. The outcome was perfect. His head didn't feel any pressure as it drilled through. When his body tried to crawl out again, his stomach was stuck, as if something had hooked onto his fur. If he tried to force his way out, he would feel a little pain. Poor little kitty, where did you come from? Why are you here? Just as Zhouwen was about to retreat, he heard a familiar voice. Not good. Zhouwen's expression turned nasty when he heard the voice. For some reason, Wang Lu had returned. Zhouwen struggled to return to the yard, but something had hooked onto the fur on his belly. He couldn't retreat no matter how hard he tried. His belly felt like it was about to be torn apart. Poor little fellow. Why are you so stupid? Wang Lu squatted down and reached out to press down on Zhouwen. Then, she reached down with her other hand and helped him untie a metal wire. This made Zhouwen feel pleased with himself as he finally crawled out. Zhouwen wanted to leave, but Wang Lu grabbed him and carried him up. Although you look like a stray cat and not an expensive breed, you look pretty. Come back with me, all right? Zhouwen struggled with all his might, hoping to escape Wang Lu's claws. It wasn't easy for him to escape. After landing on the ground, he immediately ran away with his claws. Strange, that kitten actually rejected me? Wang Lu was somewhat surprised. She never expected this cat to be so difficult to get along with. The stray cats she had encountered in the past were all easy to get along with. Zhouwen ran out of Four Seasons Garden as though he was fleeing for his life. After running far away, he slowed down. He felt extremely exhausted. Ever since he cultivated, he hadn't felt so tired in a long time. I have to recover my human form as soon as possible. Zhouwen continued walking forward, but before long, he saw a few ferocious tigers blocking his way. No, it should be said that they were ferocious cats blocking his way. At the corner of the building in front of him, 4 cats walked out and glared at Zhouwen with their teeth bared, as though warning him not to enter their territory. The 4 cats were bigger than Zhouwen. Furthermore, Zhouwen found them a little familiar. On careful look, he recalled them. Weren't these 4 the ones that Gu Dian had secretly fed in the past? Zhouwen still remembered that one of them was called Little May. Its body was pure white, with only an orange-red fur growing on its forehead. It looked very eye-catching. However, when Zhouwen saw it previously, it was still a tiny kitten. Now it was about the same size as its mother. It was even bigger than Zhouwen. I'm just passing by. I definitely have no intention of snatching your territory, nor do I have any intention of offending you. As Zhouwen spoke, his words turned into meowing sounds. He slowly circled to the side, hoping to circle around them. Meow. However, Little May and company didn't care much as they pounced forward to deal with the intruder. Holy sh*t, do you really think I'm a cat when a tiger doesn't show its might? Zhouwen was depressed as he prepared to fight. Although he was now in the body of a cat and had lost his strength, his reaction speed and various skills were still there. Under the siege of Little May and the other 3, he was still incomparably brave. Using his coquettish positioning and pulling, he restrained the 4 cats and then defeated them one by one. His little claws fiercely beat them up, causing Little May and the other 3 to cry out miserably. Haha, you're still far from being able to fight me? Now, do you know who's the real king here? Zhouwen beat the 4 cats up and even used his claws to hold down Little May. Just as he was feeling smug, he suddenly felt the flesh on his back being grabbed and lifted up. Then, he heard a familiar voice. You can't do that. Chapter 495. Zhouwen flailed his claws, hoping to break free from the palm that was holding him, but he failed to do so. The scene in front of him changed, and soon Zhouwen saw a face. It was as ferocious as a ghost, but the eyes on the face were looking at him with an indescribable gentleness. Were you abandoned by your owner as well? You must be hungry after coming all the way here, right? Eat something first, Gu Dian said as he placed Zhouwen on the ground beside him. As Gu Dian spoke, he placed Zhouwen on the ground beside him. There were 2 cat food trays there, one filled with milk and the other with cat food. Zhouwen had never seen Gu Dian be so gentle to others, nor had he seen him speak to others in such a gentle manner. This was completely different from the Gu Dian he knew. Hurry up and eat. Zhouwen was placed beside the plate of milk as Gu Dian squatted by the side and looked at him. Little Mei and the other cats glared at him, but they didn't dare come over. All they did was meow from afar. Little Mei, little Yong, you can't do this. It's just like you. It's a pitiful homeless fellow. You should love each other, Gu Dian said to the 4 cats. Zhouwen had goosebumps when he heard that. He turned around and wanted to leave. In order to prevent Gu Dian from catching him again, he ran with all his might. However, after running for some distance, he didn't hear Gu Dian's footstep. Instead, he heard an unfamiliar man's voice coming from afar. How's the matter I asked you to do? It's been so long, but you can't even do such a simple thing. Don't tell me you're afraid of Zhouwen? Zhouwen originally didn't plan on stopping, but after running a few steps, he heard his name. He couldn't help but stop and turn his head. He saw a boy in a school uniform standing opposite Gu Dian. Zhouwen didn't know the boy, but he looked like a senior who was slightly older than him. Why did you touch Zhouwen? Gu Dian asked the boy. You don't need to know. Just do as I say. The boy curled his lips and said, I'll give you 3 more days. If you haven't done what I've instructed you to do in 3 days, I'm afraid I won't be able to help you keep that secret. Think about it yourself. With that said, the boy turned around and left with a cold expression. With Zhouwen's understanding of Gu Dian, this fellow was likely someone who wasn't afraid of anything. If someone dared to threaten him, he would probably throw a punch at them regardless of who they were, right? But this time, Gu Dian watched the arrogant boy leave without any intention of taking action. Zhouwen was very curious. He didn't know who the boy was and what he wanted. What leverage does Gu Dian have that he has? After some thought, Zhouwen didn't leave immediately. He wanted to figure out what was going on. After all, this matter involved him. If he didn't figure out who the mastermind was, similar incidents might happen in the future. Zhouwen walked to Gu Dian's side. When Gu Dian saw it, his fierce face revealed a hint of gentleness. He squatted down and placed the milk plate in front of Zhouwen. Hurry up and eat. Zhouwen was a little anxious. Gu Dian clearly wasn't a person who liked to speak. It was probably unrealistic to wait for him to talk to himself about what had happened. How can I get Gu Dian to tell me the entire story? Countless thoughts flashed through Zhouwen's mind, but he failed to come up with a solution. Ask Gu Dian after transforming back into a human? This was clearly not a good idea. His relationship with Gu Dian wasn't that close. He was only slightly better than a stranger. If he were to ask him in person, he might fall out with him on the spot. Even if he didn't, with Gu Dian's personality, he probably wouldn't tell him anything. As Zhouwen pondered over it, Gu Dian pushed the milk to Zhouwen's mouth. How could Zhouwen drink the milk for a cat? He subconsciously turned his head to the side, indicating that he didn't want to drink it. However, when Zhouwen's action landed in Gu Dian's eyes, he sighed softly. Do you think it's wrong too? Do you think I did something wrong? Zhouwen subconsciously nodded, but just as he nodded, he regretted it. He was a cat now, so how could he understand Gu Dian? Gu Dian looked at Zhouwen in surprise. However, his ability to accept things was clearly stronger than Zhouwen imagined. He didn't suspect Zhou Wen and even thought that Zhou Wen was a very intelligent cat. I also know that it's wrong, but if I don't do that, they will spread the news that I have a dimensional creature's bloodline. When the time comes, everyone will treat me as a monster and not a human, Gu Dian said. Zhou Wen nearly cried out in surprise. He never expected Gu Dian to have the bloodline of a dimensional creature. Could it be that either Gu Dian's father or mother is a dimensional creature? Can humans and dimensional creatures combine and give birth to offspring? Countless strange thoughts flashed through Zhou Wen's mind. But all this time, Zhou Wen and company have treated me like an ordinary person. They haven't been afraid of me because of my looks or ostracized me. They have treated me as one of them. How can I do such a thing? What do you think I should do? Gu Dian looked at Zhou Wen and said bitterly. Due to Gu Dian's problems, he didn't have the chance to make human friends. Furthermore, he didn't know how to communicate with humans. However, in front of a cat, he could speak his mind at ease. Wasn't this a form of sorrow? Beat him up. Beat that son of a bitch to death. Who cares if he's human or not? Ignoring the fact that you have a dimensional creature bloodline, I wouldn't mind even if you were a beast. Zhou Wen wanted to say that, but the moment he opened his mouth, it turned into a meow. Zhou Wen had no choice but to raise a claw and point in the direction where the boy had left. He pointed a few times, indicating for Gu Dian to beat him up. When Gu Dian saw Zhou Wen's reaction, he seemed to understand something as his eyes turned resolute. I know what to do, Gu Dian said to Zhou Wen before standing up and striding in the direction the boy had left in. Zhou Wen hesitated for a moment before chasing after him. He still wanted to know the boy's goal in dealing with him. He might be able to hear it later. However, after becoming a cat, Zhou Wen lost all his primordial energy. His fastest speed was only the speed of a house cat, so how could he catch up to Gu Dian? By the time he caught up to Gu Dian, he saw that Gu Dian was already standing in front of the boy as though he was talking to him. I can't attack Zhou Wen. Change to another condition, Zhou Wen vaguely heard Gu Dian's voice say. Change to another condition? What right do you have to bargain with me? Don't tell me you really think that Zhou Wen and company treat you as a friend? They just want to use you because you are stupid and strong. If they know that you have a dimensional creature bloodline, do you think they will still be willing to let you stay in the Xianwen Club? When that happens, they will only treat you as a monster. They will look at you like pigs and dogs. They are all beasts, the boy said as he pointed at Gu Dian's nose. Chapter 496. This has nothing to do with you, Gu Dian said with his head lowered. How can it have nothing to do with me? At the end of the day, aren't we good friends? The boy smiled as he patted Gu Dian on the shoulder and continued, Have you forgotten our friendship? I've always remembered it. Gu Dian's pupils constricted, but he still didn't say a word. Think about it carefully. The present Zhou Wen will be the second me in the future. The boy narrowed his eyes and said, Birds of a feather flock together. Your birth has already determined that you won't have any true human friend. Apart from people like me, humans won't accept a monster like you. If you don't touch Zhou Wen now, when he learns of your true identity in the future, he won't hesitate to draw a line with you. He might even kill you. After a pause, the boy continued, Don't tell me you don't know what happened to his teacher, Wang Mingyuan. Do you think he will still admit that he's Wang Mingyuan's student? If Wang Mingyuan appears again, it means that he will definitely want to kill Wang Mingyuan. That has nothing to do with me, Gu Dian said expressionlessly. Nothing to do with you? In that case, even if everyone knows how your mother gave birth to you, it won't be a problem? The boy narrowed his eyes and stared at Gu Dian. Gu Dian's expression changed drastically. He suddenly raised his head and glared at the boy. Lu Kaid, if you dare leak a word, I'll definitely kill you. I'm just saying. How can I leak it? We're friends. I'll definitely keep your matters a secret for you. I won't let anyone know. However, you have to help me settle Zhou Wen's matter. Otherwise, I won't be able to live. Some things will be hard to say. As Lu Kide spoke, he suddenly saw a cat leap up and claw at his face, leaving a few bloody marks on his face. Zhou was about to explode from anger after listening for a long time. Although he didn't hear the entire story, he could roughly guess what had happened. Gu Dian wasn't a normal human. Furthermore, it wasn't his problem, but it stemmed from the previous generation. Lu Kide had used some unknown method to become Gu Dian's friend and learn of his secret. In turn, he had used this secret to threaten Gu Dian. Zhou could also understand why Gu Dian didn't retaliate. Just like Gu Dian, he didn't wish to bring trouble to others, especially his family. If it was just a matter of his identity, he believed that Gu Dian wouldn't be threatened by him. He would have long beaten him up so badly that even his mother wouldn't recognize him. However, this involved Gu Dian's mother's reputation. Therefore, even though Gu Dian was extremely furious, he didn't dare attack Lu Kide. Without a doubt, Lu Kide wasn't a fool. He definitely had some kind of evidence in hand. Furthermore, even if he died, this evidence would still spread. Only then could he threaten Gu Dian. The more he understood Gu Dian, the more upset Zhou felt. When he saw Lu Kide's despicable face, he couldn't help but go forward and slap him a few times. Now, Zhou only hated himself for losing his strength. Otherwise, he would definitely have smacked Lu Kide's face into mush. Now, all he could do was leave a few bloody marks. Darn cat! Gu Dian, you bastard! What the hell are you raising? Lu Kide was enraged as he reached out to grab Zhou. Zhou ran and jumped onto Gu Dian's back. Stop! Gu Dian blocked Lu Kide. Move aside. I'm going to kill this bastard. As Lu Kide spoke, he wanted to grab Zhou. Zhou lay on Gu Dian's shoulder and looked at him with a faint smile, as though he was mocking him. Gu Dian didn't move aside. Instead, he reached out to stop Lu Kide. Lu Kide was extremely furious, but he was stopped by Gu Dian and couldn't grab Zhou. However, he didn't give up because of this. He took 2 steps back and suddenly summoned a companion beast. The companion beast was a strange flying saber. After it flew out, it circled around Gu Dian and stabbed at Zhou on his back. It was as fast as lightning. Zhou was alarmed as he cursed inwardly. He was only a cat now, so it was probably difficult for him to dodge such a fast flying saber. A huge hand suddenly grabbed the blade of the flying saber. The flying saber trembled in Gu Dian's hand, but it was unable to escape. Gu Dian, let go, Lu Kide shouted angrily. He's just a cat. Gu Dian held the flying saber tightly, but blood dripped down from between his fingers. I'll say it one last time. Let go. Otherwise, everything about you will spread throughout Luoyang tomorrow, Lu Kide said fiercely as he glared at Gu Dian. Gu Dian held the flying saber without letting go. He didn't say a word as he looked at Lu Kide. Lu Kide was even more infuriated. He summoned another saber and slashed at Gu Dian. He even shouted, "Get out of the way! Do you hear me?" Gu Dian didn't move. Lu Kide's saber struck his shoulder, causing blood to spurt out. However, Gu Dian's body was indeed strong. The saber only injured his flesh and didn't manage to cut into his bones. Lu Kide didn't give up. He slashed at Gu Dian again and again, leaving bloody marks on his body. Even the flesh on his face had split open. It had to be said that Gu Dian's body was truly powerful. Under such a slash, he only suffered superficial injuries. When the blade struck his bones, one could even hear the sound of metal clanging. The reason why Lu Kide was so furious wasn't because Zhou had scratched his face, but because Gu Dian had repeatedly disobeyed his orders. This made him very angry and he wanted to harm him. Zhou scratching his face was just an excuse. Beat him up. Zhou turned anxious when he saw Gu Dian allowing Lu Kide to slash at him without moving. Do you think of yourself as the same kind as these beasts? Do you think they are more important than your life? Monsters are monsters. Lu Kide cursed as he slashed. Seeing that Gu Dian wasn't moving, Zhou couldn't bear listening any further. He saw an opportunity and suddenly leaped out from Lu Kai's shoulder. His claws quickly danced as he grabbed at Lu Kai's eyes. Ah! Lu Kai never expected that a cat would be able to pass through his saber net. Furthermore, they were too close. His left eye was injured by Zhou claws. He covered his eye with one hand as blood immediately seeped out from between his fingers. I'll kill you! Lu Kai covered his eye in rage. The saber in his hand transformed into a saber beam that filled the sky as he slashed at Zhou. This fellow's strength was indeed not bad. Zhou had never heard of his name. It was obvious that he wasn't famous in school, but he had the strength of a legendary. Furthermore, he was at the pinnacle. Clearly, he had been hiding his strength. From this, it was obvious that he wasn't an ordinary person. He definitely had some ulterior motives. Seeing that Zhou had fallen into the saber beam, Gu Dian's eyes immediately widened as he unleashed his strength. His powerful body charged into the saber beam that filled the sky. He hugged Zhou with one hand and struck out with the other. There was an explosion, and the saber light that filled the sky dissipated. The long saber in Lu Kai's hand broke inch by inch, and he was sent flying by the force. He fell 7 or 8 meters away, and the hand that held the saber trembled and bled. Gu Dian, you dare attack me? Lu Kai widened his eyes as he gritted his teeth and stared at Gu Dian as though he wanted to bite him. Why wouldn't I dare? A voice sounded from the corner of the building. Lu Kai and Gu Dian's bodies trembled as they couldn't help but turn their heads to look. They saw a young officer in a military uniform and white gloves, looking refined and gentle, walking over. He's finally here. Zhou heaved a sigh of relief. Chapter 497. Zhou knew that he was only a cat and had lost his strength. He definitely couldn't handle the current situation. Thankfully, he still had the ability to send messages. Previously, when he saw that Gu Dian's phone was placed at the cat feeding area, he contacted Anxing and got him to rush over as soon as possible. This matter couldn't be resolved with pure force. Even if he killed Lu Kai, it would be useless. Otherwise, Gu Dian would have settled it himself and wouldn't have been threatened by Lu Kai. When Lu Kai saw Anxing, he immediately turned around and wanted to run. However, before he could take a few steps, Anxing's dagger was already at his neck. What are you doing? I'm a student of the college, Lu Kai calmed down and asked. Anxing said indifferently, I don't need to know who you are, but you're dead. Gu Dian, why aren't you saving me? Lu Kai shouted in Gu Dian's direction. Anxing said to Gu Dian unhurriedly, Zhou asked me to come over. He has already told me everything about you. He asked me to tell you to trust him and leave everything to me. Gu Dian, you should know what the consequences will be if I die, right? Lu Kai knew that Gu Dian was his only hope. He had heard of Anxing's name. How could he not know the famous Anxing of the An family since he could come to Luoyang to carry out a mission? Gu Dian hugged Zhou and pondered for a moment before nodding slightly at Anxing. The corners of Anxing's mouth curled up slightly as he revealed a smile. The dagger in his hand had already pressed into the skin of Lu Kai's neck. Answer whatever I ask. I don't want to hear any nonsense, Anxing said. Lu Kai opened his mouth to say something, but Anxing continued, If you waste my time, I don't mind using memory deprivation to obtain the information I want from your mind. Lu Kai's expression changed drastically as he hesitated as though he was considering a decision. Don't try to commit suicide. I didn't let you die. Even Hades can't take your life, Anxing said indifferently. If I tell you everything, can you spare my life? Lu Kai said through gritted teeth. Sure, Anxing answered. Swear. Lu Kai had no other choice. He was already a piece of meat on the chopping block. He could only take a gamble. He did not want to die. Anxing's expression didn't change as he swore an oath. If he broke it, he would die a horrible death. Then, he asked Lu Kai about Gu Dian. As Gu Dian was beside him, Lu Kai didn't seem to lie and explained everything clearly. He had a recording of Gu Dian's conversation with him. Back then, Gu Dian had treated him as his only good friend, so he had said everything. Lu Kai did not give this recording to anyone. He only registered a few accounts online and set it to be automatically updated. If no one changed the automatic update time, the recording and the article he wrote would be sent out. And Xing didn't listen to the recording. He just deleted all the content. Where's the backup? Don't tell me you didn't, and Xing asked Lu Kai after deleting it. In an ancient Greek book on my dormitory classmate's bookshelf. No one will read that book, Lu Kai answered. Following that, and Xing asked about Lu Kai's origins. He admitted that he was a field agent nurtured by the Special Inspector Bureau. He had entered Sunset College to monitor the family and Sunset College's chancellor and tutors. Recently, he had received a mission to think of a way to get Zhou Wen back to headquarters, so he had used Gu Dian. I've told you everything. Can you let me go now? Lu Kai said after a long while. You did tell me everything, but how do I know if you're telling the truth? And Xing said calmly as he looked at Lu Kai. What I said is true. At this point, there's no need for me to lie to you, Lu Kai said. That might not be the case. This matter is very important. I have to verify it personally. As Xing spoke, a black flame appeared on his body. The flames were like ghosts as they floated towards Lu Kai and drilled into his brain. Ah! You swore to let me live. Otherwise, you will die a horrible death. Lu Kai shouted in horror. He roughly guessed that Xing was going to deprive him of his soul and memories, but he struggled with all his might, but his body couldn't move no matter how hard he struggled. Before you came to Luoyang, you should have known that I have a nickname, Devil's Adjutant, right? Is there a devil who abides by the agreement? And Xing said to Lu Kai with a smile. You can't do this to me. You can't. Lu Kai was alarmed and furious. His eyes were filled with despair, anger, and indignation. The pain that went straight to his soul seemed to slice off his brain bit by bit. It made him want to scream crazily, but he couldn't make a sound when he opened his mouth. And Xing only looked at him coldly as the black flames on his body constantly seeped into his brain. Lu Kai's eyes gradually lost focus. When the devil-like flames drilled out of Lu Kai's brain and returned to Xing's body, Lu Kai had already become a cold corpse. Even in death, his face had a twisted expression. And Xing opened the foldable cloth bag he had brought and placed Lu Kai's corpse inside. After slinging it over his shoulder, he said to Gu Dian, "In the future, other than Zhou Wen and me, no one else will know about you. Unfortunately, there's no way to silence Zhou Wen and me. This is the only way." Thank. Gu Dian said the word somewhat awkwardly. He had never said such a word before. Don't say that word. You don't need to thank anyone because that person is your friend. With that said, Xing left with Lu Kai's corpse. Friend. Gu Dian's expression turned odd. In the past, he might have believed that he had friends. Back then, he had been touched by Lu Kai and treated him as a true friend. In the end, he was betrayed. From then on, he would rather be with cats than believe in humans, much less any friends. Although he still didn't believe it, there was a slight change in his heart. At the very least, Gu Dian believed that this matter had been resolved. In the future, he wouldn't need to be threatened to do things he didn't want to do. I'm finally free. Gu Dian snapped to his senses and raised the kitten in his arms as a smile appeared on his face. From his point of view, this kitten had brought him luck, allowing him to finally be himself. Gu Dian raised the kitten into the air and revealed a smile that came from the bottom of his heart. Although he was still as ferocious, it made people unable to control themselves from smiling with him. The kitten's face also revealed a smile. At that moment, Gu Dian suddenly felt the kitten in his hand become heavier. Its body was also changing. In the blink of an eye, The kitten that Gu Dian had raised had turned into a living man. Their eyes met, and the air seemed to freeze at that instant. Smiles also froze on Gu Dian and Zhou Wen's faces. A gentle breeze blew, and Zhou Wen felt his body turn cold. Chapter 498. I Have to Conquer Chess Mountain's Instance Dungeon. Zhou Wen, who had returned to his dorm, made up his mind. 1 week. Prepare everything I need. Otherwise, it won't be as simple as transforming into a cat for a while. The Dharch sent a message. Clearly, the Dharch didn't plan on making Zhou Wen a cat forever. She only made him transform into a cat for a while as a warning. Now, Zhou Wen was filled with regret. If he had known this would happen, he would have stayed in his dorm obediently. Why would he go out? Thinking back to the scene of him looking into Gu Dian's eyes, he wished he could find a hole to burrow into. Although Zhou Wen had already made up his mind to think of a way to crack Chess Mountain and drag the Dharch out. When the time came, he would transform her into a cat and raise her high. However, he still had to feign civility and not let her notice anything amiss. When he cracked Chess Mountain in the dungeon and found her flaws, he would personally go to Chess Mountain and teach her a lesson. I'll buy it as soon as possible, Zhou Wen replied. After some thought, Zhou Wen sent another message. Previously, I was being pursued and escaped into a dimensional zone. There, I discovered a huge snake. Zhou Wen described the snake's physical characteristics and abilities in the temple clearly because he wanted to ask the Dharch if she knew what dimensional creature it was. Since he couldn't do anything to the Dharch now, he might as well make use of her. What snake? That's Torch Dragon, one of the dragon species. It's extremely powerful, and its pair of eyes can affect the day and night. When it opens its eyes, it's day. When it closes its eyes, it's night. It's an extremely powerful ancient creature. Although it's still far inferior to me, it's not something a mere human like you can match. It's your good fortune to be able to return alive after encountering it, the Dharch replied. The Dharch sure is knowledgeable. That Torch Dragon's eyes are indeed very powerful. With just a glance, it can kill many human experts. It's practically invincible. I wonder if the Dharch can crack its terrifying ability? Zhou Wen sent another message. That's called Bright Torch Vision World. It's not a bad ability, but how difficult can it be for me to crack it? All you need to do is use an invisibility spell to make it invisible. When the time comes, it'll be up to me if it wants to kill or scrape, the Dharch replied. Could it be that even someone as powerful as the Dharch can't fight Torch Dragon head-on? Zhou Wen deliberately said. The Thearcha's words were similar to what Zhou Wen had thought. However, although he had the invisibility cloak, it hadn't hatched yet. It was impossible for him to become invisible. Isn't it easy to defeat it head-on? I can kill it with a wave of my hand, preventing it from opening its eyes. Or I can use a mirror to reflect its gaze and make it suffer the consequences of its actions. The Dharch was a proud person, so she immediately replied. The Thearcha's means are truly outstanding. I wonder what kind of mirror can reflect Torch Dragon's bright torch vision world? Zhou Wen was delighted when he heard that. If a mirror could reflect the bright torch vision world, then he really had a chance of killing Torch Dragon. There was no need to wait for the invisibility cloak. Don't tell me you want to kill Zhulong? Are you courting death? The Dharch had clearly come to her senses and sent a message. I'm just asking. How would I dare kill Torch Dragon? Zhou Wen denied. The mirrors you humans are making now have very good reflections. They can reflect Torch Dragon's bright torch vision world. However, those mirrors are too weak. They shatter when they encounter external forces. Apart from the bright torch vision world, Torch Dragon's body isn't something a mere human can deal with. If you want to die, you can give it a try, the Dharch said. Upon hearing the Thearcha's words, Zhou Wen was truly excited. He never expected an ordinary mirror to be able to deal with Torch Dragon. Then, his chances of killing Torch Dragon were very high. I'm just asking. Even if Torch Dragon invites me to kill it, I'm not free. I still have to help the Dharch buy things. By the way, I previously encountered a terrifying dimensional creature. That dimensional creature looked like a wolf or a tiger, but it wasn't a wolf. Zhou continued to seek information from the Dharch. The Dharch really knew everything. She told Zhou that it might be one of the 4 ancient ferocious beasts, Qiongqi. Not only did it have the ability to devour everything, but it also had terrifying speed. It was even harder to deal with than Torch Dragon. Furthermore, the Dharch also told Zhou a strange method. She said that if he wanted to deal with Qiongqi, he had to find an evil person to deal with it. The chances of killing it would be very high. However, if a good person were to fight Qiongqi, even if the good person's combat strength was the same as the evil person or even stronger than the evil person, there was a high chance that he wouldn't be able to defeat Qiongqi and would be devoured. Zhou was skeptical. He didn't know if the Dharch was telling the truth or if she was just joking. Zhou admitted that he wasn't a good person, but he wasn't an evil person, so he couldn't test it out. Remember, you only have a week. If I don't see those things again, prepare to be in deep trouble. The Dharch sent the last message and ignored Zhou. Zhou contacted Li Xian and gave him the list, asking if he could help him buy it. After a while, Li Xian replied that it was no problem. Zhou transferred the money to him and got him to use his connections with the Li family to help him purchase it. As for him, he was considering how to kill Torch Dragon. Although he knew that the mirror might be helpful in killing Torch Dragon, ordinary mirrors couldn't be brought into the game. Zhou had no way of testing the feasibility of this theory. Head straight to the Zhuolu ruins? Zhou didn't dare take the risk. Ignoring the fact that the Dharch wasn't telling the truth, even if she was, the mirror could only reflect the bright Torch Vision world. It was useless against Torch Dragon's other abilities. Furthermore, it was too easy to shatter. If anything went wrong, Zhou would lose his life. How can I get a mirror into the game? Zhou thought for a moment before going online to check if there were any companion beasts that could transform into mirrors. After checking, he found quite a number of them. For example, there was a bright jade immortal mirror in the Kunlun immortal realm that could transform into an ancient mirror. However, that thing was relatively rare. Furthermore, the Kunlun immortal realm was too dangerous. Even epic creatures had a high chance of dying. Furthermore, it was too far from Zhou. The other places that produced mirror-type companion beasts were either too far away or too dangerous. Just as Zhou was fretting, he accidentally saw the introduction of some companion beasts in the West District. His eyes couldn't help but light up. Among the companion beasts, there was an epic companion beast named Sun Beast. Its companion form was a mirror, and it had the ability to reflect light very well. Most importantly, the place that produced the Sun Beast was in Zhou's phone game. That place was called Music Temple. Chapter 499. Zhou picked up his phone and activated the Music Temple dungeon. He had been here once before, but because there were only legendary musical note sprites for a long distance, he found it meaningless to continue grinding them. He never expected there to be something as good as the Sun Beast in the Music Temple. Now that he was in need of a mirror-type companion beast, he didn't hesitate to rush in to grind the Sun Beast. According to the information on the internet, Zhou knew that dimensional creatures like the Sun Beast were actually very rare in the Music Temple. Only one would occasionally appear, and it was rare for people to see more than 2 Sun Beasts appear in the Music Temple at the same time. Furthermore, the Sun Beast wasn't the real boss of the Music Temple. It was said that in the deepest depths of the Music Temple, there was a 7-string zither. Anyone who had seen it was dead. Zhou found this very contradictory. Since the people who had seen the 7-string zither were all dead, how could anyone know that there was a 7-string zither there? Therefore, sometimes legends were just legends. They couldn't be trusted. Zhou didn't plan on finding the 7-string zither. After entering the music temple with his pet, he ran towards the area mentioned on the internet. He wanted to see if there was a sun beast in-game. Legend had it that the sun beast's entire body emitted light like a small sun. It could be seen from afar, and it typically appeared at the music fountain square in the music temple. Zhou rushed all the way to the music fountain square. With Six-Winged and Fire Queen leading the way, Zhou killed many of the musical note sprites, dropping many crystals and companion eggs. Zhou realized that there were a total of 7 musical note sprites. Furthermore, each musical note sprite only had one essence energy skill, but the essence energy skills of the 7 musical note sprites were different. Although they were different, the effects were about the same. They were all sound wave attack. To Zhou, there didn't seem to be much of a difference. In the beginning, Zhou didn't think much of it, but as he killed them, he found it interesting. These sound wave attacks formed a shock wave through the medium's vibrations and amplitude wave. The 7 different sound wave attacks formed different shock waves. This intrigued Zhou, so he hatched some musical note sprites. As he rode on Six-Wing's back and constantly advanced, he also studied the musical note sprites' sound wave attack. After killing countless musical note spirits, he finally arrived at the music fountain square. On the large square there were 7 fountains. Those fountains didn't constantly spray water, but rather they seemed to be playing music, spraying water rhythmically. Sometimes they sprayed high, sometimes they sprayed low, and sometimes they didn't even spray. It looked very interesting. Above the musical fountain square, there were musical note sprites floating everywhere. They were colorful, winged musical note sprites flying all over the sky. They were similar to the colorful pieces of paper at a wedding, but there were more of them. The 6-winged guardian dragon roared as demonic flames spewed out from its body, instantly killing a large number of musical note sprites. However, the musical fountain square was quite large, and musical note sprites were everywhere. Soon, new musical note sprites rushed over. He got his companion beasts to kill the musical note sprites while he looked around to find the sun beast. However, after scanning the entire music fountain square, he didn't see the legendary sun beast that resembled a tiny sun. Instead, a strange dimensional creature attracted his attention. Ever since he entered Music Temple, the dimensional creatures Zhou saw were all kinds of musical note sprites. There were probably only 7 types. However, the dimensional creature he saw this time wasn't a musical note sprite. It was a harp. The harp was golden in color, but it didn't look like metal. Instead, it was carved from wood. There were gorgeous and exquisite patterns on it. The last time Zhou went to the Peninsula of Gods, he had learned about such musical instruments. He had also seen harps there, and the harps he saw were very big. However, the harp in front of him was very small. It was about the size of a violin. Furthermore, it was like the musical note sprites. It also had a pair of wings, and they were resplendent golden wings. Sensing Zhou Wen's companion beasts wreaking havoc on the musical fountain square, the strings on the harp moved without any wind, producing a melodious sound. Although its sound was very soft, it didn't seem to be aggressive. However, in the next second, Zhou discovered a strange scene. As the harp's sound rang, the countless musical note sprites on the musical fountain square lined up in a regular pattern. Furthermore, they produced sounds as though they were responding to the harp's sound. The countless musical note sprites in the entire musical square seemed to resonate as they emitted an extremely huge sound wave. The power of the sound wave actually instantly killed powerful epic creatures like the Fire Furnace Queen and the White Shadow of Poison. Their bodies shattered under the sound wave. Even the 6-winged guardian dragon took a few steps back under the impact of the sound wave. The demonic flames on its body flickered incessantly. Roar! The 6-winged guardian dragon was enraged as it let out an angry roar. The demonic flames on its back rose and transformed into 4 wings, entering its 6-winged state. It spewed out a poisonous breath from its mouth, transforming into a terrifying tide that instantly killed all the musical note sprites. The harp's strings constantly sounded automatically. All the musical note sprites in the musical fountain square echoed it, emitting terrifying sound waves that resisted the six-winged guardian dragon's poisonous breath. The powerful six-winged guardian dragon was actually blocked by the sound wave attack. Amidst the sound wave's tremors, the poisonous breath shattered and swept back. The six-winged guardian dragon's body seemed to be moving against the current, unable to move forward. As for the blood-colored avatar, it had long retreated from the musical fountain square under Zhou Wen's control. Furthermore, it had transformed into the demon dragon true body to withstand the sound wave attack. Instead of being alarmed, Zhou Wen was delighted because this made him see a possibility. There were the most legendary dimensional creatures, so the number of companion eggs that dropped was also the highest. However, no matter how many legendary companion eggs there were, even if they could form an army, their true combat strength wasn't high. This was because the suppression of absolute strength was too great. Even thousands of skeleton soldiers couldn't kill a human wearing epic armor. Therefore, a low-level companion beast army was basically useless. It wasn't of much use when dealing with powerful dimensional creatures. However, the golden harp and the musical note sprites were actually able to combine their powers to fight the six-winged guardian dragon. This was rather impressive. There are so many musical note sprites in Music Temple, so the chances of companion eggs dropping aren't low. If I had the ability of the golden harp, would I be able to form a musical note sprite army? Zhou Wen thought. Chapter 500. The six-winged guardian dragon fought the sound waves head-on, but it couldn't gain an advantage. It was forced back by the sound waves again and again, unable to charge over. However, the sound waves couldn't injure the six-winged guardian dragon. They could only temporarily stop it. Every time the six-winged guardian dragon attacked, a portion of the musical note sprites would be killed. As the number of musical note sprites decreased, the power of the sound waves weakened. It was only a matter of time before the harp and musical note sprites were defeated. Zhou Wen didn't think that the golden harp was useless because of this. After all, the musical note sprites it had gathered were only at the legendary stage. If a large number of epic musical note sprites could enter its ranks, the power of the sound waves wouldn't be that simple. As long as enough power joined in, it wasn't impossible to defeat a mythical creature. Zhou Wen wasn't in the mood to wait for the six-winged guardian dragon to defeat it. He secretly summoned demonic Neonate, who found an opportunity to secretly release her flying sword. The flying sword flew in through the sound waves and sliced the golden harp into two. After all, it was only at the epic stage. After losing the resonance with the musical note army, it couldn't withstand demonic Neonate's flying sword. Killed epic creature, golden harp. Discovered companion egg. Zhou Wen was delighted. He never expected his luck to be so good today. A companion egg had dropped in one go. After losing the golden harp, the hundreds of thousands of musical note sprites became a mob again. They were no longer able to fight the six-winged guardian dragon. The six-winged guardian dragon charged over, and in the surging demonic flames, a large number of musical note sprites were killed. Many crystals and companion eggs dropped. As there were just too many of them, even if the drop rate wasn't high, many companion eggs still dropped. Zhou Wen controlled the blood-colored avatar to pick up the golden harp and the ordinary musical note sprite companion eggs and chose to hatch them. In a short while, Zhou Wen hatched more than 100 musical note sprites. On his left arm, 7 small musical symbols appeared. Each musical symbol was very dark in color. The same type of companion beast had the same tattoo. They would overlap, and the more there were, the darker the color of the tattoo. The stats of the musical note sprites weren't much different. All of them only had a sound wave skill. There wasn't much difference, so Zhou Wen didn't look at them carefully. He focused on the golden harp stats. Golden harp, epic life providence, symphony of fate life soul, Spirit of Music Strength, 32 Speed, 39 Constitution, 31 Essence Energy, 40 Innate Skill, First Movement of Symphony of Fate. Companion Form, none. Zhou couldn't help but be delighted when he read the various information on the golden harp. Its ability was clearly not as simple as integrating musical note sprites. As long as it was a musical power, it could integrate it. If Zhou could obtain a large number of high-level sound elemental creatures in the future, epic or even mythical existences, and use the power of the golden harp to combine them together, the power he could unleash would be immeasurable. In this regard, although the golden harp was only at the epic stage, its value might be higher than some mythical items. Of course, the premise was that Zhou had enough music-type companion beasts to cooperate with the golden harp. Otherwise, with its own strength, it could only be considered at the bottom of the epic stage. After all, the golden harp's attack wasn't strong. It could even be said to be very weak. After obtaining the golden harp, Zhou was in a good mood. He led the six-winged guardian dragon to continue killing the musical note sprites. Now, he wasn't in a hurry to find the sun beast. The 100,000 musical note sprites in the square were wantonly killed by the six-winged guardian dragon. Zhou followed behind to pick up the items. After the entire music fountain square was cleared, Zhou obtained a total of more than 200 musical note sprites. The pitiful baby tiger had been killed when the golden harp showed its might. Otherwise, there would have been more. There's no rush. There's plenty of time in the future. I'll be able to form an army sooner or later. Without discovering the sun beast, Zhou continued walking forward with the six-winged guardian dragon and entered the hall behind the square. As soon as he entered the hall, he saw a blob of light appear in the innermost part of the hall. Upon seeing the six-winged guardian dragon and the blood-colored avatar, the blob of light that resembled a small sun immediately shot out a beam of light. The six-winged guardian dragon couldn't care less as it spat out a mouthful of demonic flames. When the light met the demonic flames, it didn't shatter. However, it seemed to be scattered and reflected by the demonic flames. Beams of light shone on the walls and pillars of the palace, causing green smoke to emit from the spots that were illuminated. The demonic flames split the beam of light and burned the sun beast's body. Zhou didn't even see what the sun beast looked like before it was killed. Killed epic creature, sun beast. Discovered dimensional crystal. Zhou went over to take a look and realized that it was only a 34 strength crystal. It was completely useless. There were no other sun beasts in the hall, nor were there any dimensional creatures. Zhou circled around and left the hall before heading to the other buildings near the music fountain square. He found some musical note sprites and an epic musical frog. It could emit sound waves and was extremely fast, but it was still easily killed by the six-winged guardian dragon. After circling around, apart from not daring to head to the music temple, Zhou almost cleared the entire music temple. He didn't find the golden harp or the sun beast. Helpless, Zhou could only exit the music temple dungeon and head to the metalwork temple to grind again. His luck wasn't bad. He obtained a runic heavy-armored warrior companion egg and immediately hatched it. Now, Zhou was still thinking of a way to fuse an armored companion beast. The runic heavy-armored warrior and golden warrior had a compatibility score of more than 70, so the success rate was still very high. Zhou wasn't that unlucky the second time. With the legendary golden warrior as his main pet and the runic heavy-armored warrior companion egg as support, he fused an epic golden warrior. Golden warrior, epic life providence, golden evasion life soul, blessed combat runes. Zhou was overjoyed when he saw the life providence and life soul. It was perfect, exactly what he wanted. However, after looking at the stats, Zhou frowned. 27, 32, 29, 34. The epic golden warrior stats were indeed too low. Its skills weren't ideal either. It only had the golden bell and fist of war. What should I use to fuse it again? Zhou thought to himself. The best fusion plan was naturally to obtain the three-eyed golden warrior's invulnerable golden body skill. This way, he could increase his stats and obtain a good skill. The golden bell and invulnerable golden body could increase his defense. The only problem was that the drop rate of the three-eyed golden warrior companion egg was similarly very low. Zhou had been grinding dungeons with all his might recently. Every time he entered the music temple, he would only encounter one sun beast. He also kept grinding the metalwork temple and the three-eyed golden warrior. As for the golden harp, he hadn't seen it since the first time. Chapter 501. In the huge music hall, there was only one sun beast at a time. This greatly increased the difficulty of Zhou when obtaining the sun beast companion egg. He had no choice but to use his blood to grind dungeons again and again. Thankfully, apart from the sun beast, Zhou could also grind the baby tiger, the elegant emperor's avatar puppet, the runic heavy-armored warrior, the three-eyed golden warrior, the mutated overlord snake, and other rare dimensional creatures. Some companion beasts' levels weren't high, but their skills or life providences were really useful. If he farmed a few more now, he might be able to use them when he fused them in the future. While grinding for pets, Zhou found another good place to go. The place Zhou found wasn't in Sunset College, but a dimensional zone in Luoyang. It wasn't too famous and most people rarely went there. This was because there were fewer dimensional creatures there and the drop rate was low. It was even more troublesome to kill them. Most people weren't willing to go, but Zhou felt that it was a good place. The dimensional zone he specially applied for leave to go to was Peony Garden. There was a local legend that in ancient times, the Empress of the East District had once ordered 100 flowers to bloom after getting drunk in Chang, and to liven up her mood. The flowers bloomed at different seasons, but due to the Empress's tyranny, they had no choice but to bloom at the same time. The Empress was happy when she saw it, but she realized that among the flowers, there was a flower that hadn't bloomed at all. It still stood with withered leaves. It was the peony. The Empress was furious and demoted the peony to Luoyang, but to her surprise, the moment the peony arrived in Luoyang, it immediately bloomed like a red sunset. The Empress was even angrier when she heard that. She ordered the peony to be burned to death, but to her surprise, the peony bloomed even more beautifully. Legend had it that this peony garden was inherited from the peony flower that the Empress had demoted here. Of course, that was only a legend. No matter how powerful the Empress of the mortal world was, it was impossible for her to control the flowers. Therefore, why Peony Garden could become a dimensional zone was still a mystery. The peony flowers in Peony Garden were all dimensional creatures. In the past, people had wantonly chopped them down, but unfortunately, the peony flowers didn't drop dimensional crystals or companion eggs. Slowly, no one came here to chop them. There were two types of dimensional creatures that could be killed in Peony Garden. One was a bee-type dimensional creature, and the other was a butterfly. However, there were very few of them to begin with, so it was rather troublesome to find them. They were all poisonous, and there wasn't anything good to drop. Therefore, Peony Garden was gradually neglected. The reason Zhou came to the Peony Garden wasn't to kill the bees and butterflies. It was because there were very few people in the Peony Garden. Furthermore, legend had it that there was an immortal root in the Peony Garden that was the closest to nature. Zhou only wanted to game here. While gaming, he could also take in the sounds of birds and the fragrance of flowers. It was also a form of getting close to nature. Perhaps he could gain a deeper understanding of his Tao body and condense a life soul. Condensing and advancing a life soul wasn't a simple matter. Not only did it require a lot of practice, but perception and opportunities were also very important. Slaughterer, Defy Ancient Sovereign, and Lost Country were temporarily unable to improve further. All Zhou could do was study the Tao Sutra and small perfection of wisdom. Flower came to garden and indeed, there was a flower. That one too. To he to it, one, and one, and one, and one, and to one he. To he and to God, and God, world, and. The beauty of the peony was oppressive. Some people felt that it was too gorgeous, while others felt that it was a glorious beauty. There were also people who said that the peony was the queen of flowers. Zhouwen didn't know much about flowers, but he felt that the peonies were indeed beautiful. As they had mutated into dimensional creatures, the beauty of the peonies became even more soul-stirring. Zhouwen walked into the garden and found a stone pavilion in the sea of flowers. As he sat in the stone pavilion and gamed, he took in the birdsong and the fragrance of the flowers. The peony garden was indeed somewhat different from other dimensional zones. It was quiet and elegant here, and the fragrance of the flowers refreshed the mind. Apart from the peony's soul-stirring beauty, it was indeed a quiet place. However, Zhouwen didn't gain any special insights. As he circulated the Tao Sutra and gamed, he didn't improve his Tao Sutra. Zhouwen decided to focus on gaming and stop thinking about anything else. After playing for a few hours, he heard footsteps. Zhouwen originally didn't plan on paying attention, but the footsteps were approaching the stone pavilion. He used Truth Listener's ability to listen. Two people came, a middle-aged man and a 12-year-old youth. Their attire was somewhat strange. They wore plain clothes with robes over them. They weren't dressed like locals. The middle-aged man walked in front, and the youth held a sheathed saber in his hand as he followed behind him. The two of them walked all the way to the stone pavilion. They didn't walk quickly, as though they were taking a leisurely stroll and enjoying the scenery of the peony garden. To be honest, peonies were indeed beautiful, but after looking at them for a long time, no matter how beautiful they were, they would feel tired of appreciating them. This was also why many people always felt that the things in their hometowns weren't as good as the things outside. In fact, it wasn't because the things were bad, but because people were fickle. Things were precious when they were rare. After seeing too many of them, they didn't know how to cherish them. The middle-aged man kept admiring the peony flowers. After watching for a long time, he still looked interested as he carefully sized up the peony flowers he could see. The youth's temperament was clearly not as calm as the middle-aged man's. After watching for a while, he found it boring. However, he still followed behind the middle-aged man obediently and didn't cross the line. It looked like he had a good upbringing. "Teacher, there's already someone in this pavilion," the youth said in disappointment when he saw Zhouwen inside when the two of them arrived in front of the stone pavilion. The middle-aged man didn't mind. He stood outside the pavilion and asked, "Young friend, can you let us rest in the pavilion for a while?" "Of course. The stone pavilion is a shared facility to begin with. You can use it as long as you want," Zhouwen said. After the middle-aged man thanked him, he walked into the stone pavilion with the youth. The young man was carrying a large box on his back. He put the box down and opened it. He took out a piece of cloth and spread it on the ground. He also took out a small wooden table and some miscellaneous things. It looked like he was having a picnic, but the tools on the table seemed to be used for making tea. The middle-aged man and the youth sat down in front of the small wooden table. The youth could use the complicated tea set to make tea. "It's fate that we meet. Young friend, if you don't mind, why don't you try the tea from our hometown?" the middle-aged man said to Zhouwen. "Thank you for your kind intentions, but I'm not thirsty." After saying that, Zhouwen continued gaming. The middle-aged man didn't mind. As he drank his tea, he admired the flowers, looking rather pleased. "Teacher, there are so many famous dimensional zones in Luoyang. Why do we have to come to Peony Garden? It's very difficult to even see dimensional creatures here. Is there anything special about it?" the youth asked the middle-aged man after brewing the tea. Chapter 502. Flowers are like life. Plum blossoms are proud and unyielding, while chrysanthemums are noble and pure. They bloom when other flowers wither, so the first impression is that they are different. However, the peony was different. Its blooming time was not unique. Many flowers would bloom at a nearby time, but in this blooming season, it could still stand out from the rest. This was a kind of bearing, a kind of fearlessness. Although plum blossoms and chrysanthemums are unique, if they can stand out from the masses, they will be different. It's the way of the king, said the middle-aged man. The youth didn't quite understand. He looked up at the peonies outside the stone pavilion. They were beautiful, but after looking at them for too long, it was a little tiresome. After some thought, the youth said, I still like the cherry blossoms in my hometown. They aren't as gorgeous, but they are equally beautiful. Furthermore, they wither when they are at their most beautiful. They won't slowly wither like the flowers here. It reminds me of a hero in his twilight years. The splendor of a moment is naturally the most beautiful, but life isn't just a moment. Cherry blossoms don't only bloom for a year, said the middle-aged man after drinking a cup of tea. The youth hurriedly brewed another cup for the middle-aged man. After the middle-aged man drank it, he said, Today's tea is still a little lacking. Teacher, we've been out for so long. You always get me to make tea. When will you teach me the sword Tao? The youth couldn't help but ask. The middle-aged man smiled. You have been with me for 17 days since we set off. To be able to hold it in until now, it's clear that your father's teachings are quite different. Teacher, please enlighten me, said the youth with a bow. My sword Tao is a little different from your family's. It focuses on enlightenment. I've already taught you for 17 days, but you haven't gained any enlightenment. When you gain enlightenment, it will be time for me to teach you moves, said the middle-aged man. You taught me for 17 days? The youth was slightly taken aback as he looked at the middle-aged man suspiciously. But in the past 17 days we have been traveling. You have either gotten me to do chores or make tea. When have you taught me anything? That's why I said you haven't gained enlightenment, said the middle-aged man with a smile. The young man was, after all, a young man. These 17 days seemed to have worn away all his patience. He couldn't help but retort, If I knew everything, my father wouldn't have asked me to worship you as my master. Please teach me, teacher. With that said, the youth prostrated in front of the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man shook his head slightly. Your level is not high enough. The young man was a little unconvinced. He raised his head and said, I'm 12 years old this year, and I've already advanced to the legend realm. I once went to the East Heaven Academy to compete with the top 10 geniuses in swordsmanship. No one in the East Heaven Academy was my match. If my realm is not enough, then who is? Sparring is just sparring, it doesn't mean anything. Moreover, this world is very big, and the Eastern Heaven Academy is not equal to the whole world, the middle-aged man said indifferently. When the youth saw that he couldn't move the middle-aged man, no matter what he said, he couldn't help but feel angry. However, his teacher's reputation was too great, and his upbringing didn't allow him to contradict his teacher too much. Just as the youth was feeling upset, he suddenly thought of Zhou, who was on the other side of the stone pavilion. He stood up and walked in front of Zhou. He bowed slightly and asked, May I ask if you're a local here? No, I'm here to study, Zhou answered. The youth's eyes lit up when he heard that. He sized up Zhou and asked, Which college are you from? Sunset College, Zhou answered casually when he saw that he was rather polite. I've heard of Sunset College. It's one of the top 10 colleges in the Federation. It should be the best college here, right? The youth's eyes lit up. Probably, Zhou said. When the youth heard that, he turned to the middle-aged man and asked, Teacher, Sunset College is one of the top 10 colleges in the Federation. It's ranked above East Heaven Academy. They don't know who I am, so they naturally won't give in to me. If I can defeat the best student in East Heaven Academy, will you be able to teach me swordsmanship? The middle-aged man only smiled without saying a word. He picked up his teacup and took a sip. Seeing that his teacher didn't answer, the youth bowed and said, Then I'll take it that you've agreed. With that said, the youth stood up and walked in front of Zhou. May I ask who the strongest student in Sunset College is? The strongest? Zhou thought carefully for a moment before answering. If it's publicly acknowledged, it should be the president of the student council, right? What's his name? The youth asked. Wei Gu, Zhou answered. Wei Gu. The youth repeated it a few times before walking to the middle-aged man and bowing. Teacher, I'll be heading to Sunset College to challenge their strongest student. After I return victorious, you should be able to teach me swordsmanship, right? The middle-aged man glanced at Zhou and said with a smile, There's a student from Sunset College here. Why do you have to go so far? The youth said, The person I want to defeat is the strongest student in Sunset College, not an ordinary student. But from my point of view, he's stronger than you, the middle-aged man said. The youth naturally refused to believe it. He looked at Zhou and asked, What's your standard in Sunset College? Very weak. I guess I can't be considered to have made the grade. It's best you go to Sunset College to find Wei Gu, Zhou said. He wasn't interested in dealing with the child. Teacher, it looks like you've made a mistake this time, the youth said to the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man ignored the youth and looked at Zhou with a smile. My young friend, may I ask what your ranking was in the last comprehensive test at Sunset College? I barely ranked 10th, Zhou answered. When the youth heard that, he sized up Zhou again. After a while, he nodded and said, 10th is indeed a little lacking, but since teacher has spoken, I'll defeat you first before challenging the first Wei Gu. With that said, the youth made a strange gesture and said, Please accept my challenge. Sorry, I don't have time, Zhou said as he played the game. Zhou said as he gamed. He wasn't interested in the youth at all, nor was he interested in bullying children. The youth couldn't help but frown slightly. Zhou's attitude made him feel belittled. I'm Han Shinsakura. Please enlighten me. The youth assumed a stance of drawing his saber and held the hilt as though he would strike at any moment. Zhou had already rejected him, so there was no need to repeat himself. He ignored him and continued gaming. A hint of anger flashed in Han Shinsakura's eyes as he suddenly drew his saber. The saber flashed as it slashed at Zhou like bolts of lightning. Zhou was still gaming without batting an eyelid. The saber flashes only slashed past him. Although it looked dangerous, they didn't even harm the corner of his clothes. The middle-aged man's expression changed slightly as he stood up and said, Shinsakura, step down. He's not on the same level as you. Chapter 503. Han Shinsakura was already indignant. Upon hearing his teacher's evaluation, he was even more indignant. However, his teacher had already stood up. As a disciple, he had to abide by etiquette. Han Shinsakura could only retreat to the side and sulk. I'm Sei Gasakai. May I know your name? The middle-aged man asked Zhou. I wouldn't dare. My name is Zhou, Zhou answered as he put down the phone in his hand. As Zhou had never heard of Sei Gasakai's name, he didn't think much of it. However, this name was considered famous in another region, or even in the entire Federation. Speaking of sword hero Sei Gasakai, many people who practiced the way of the sword knew that he used to train in Niton Ichi. 10 years ago, he was already a master of the sword. Furthermore, he was a famous handsome man in the area. However, Zhou had no idea about this, nor had he heard of Sei Gasakai's name. When Han Shinsakura saw that his teacher, Sei Gasakai, had solemnly reported his name, he couldn't help but snort coldly. He felt that Zhou didn't respect his teacher, Sei Gasakai. However, Sei Gasakai didn't mind. He said with a smile, Zhou, are you familiar with Chancellor Leng Zongjing while studying at Sunset College? I rarely see Chancellor Leng. He stopped teaching a long time ago, Zhou answered truthfully. Isn't your tutor Leng Zongjing? Then, who's your tutor? Sei Gasakai was somewhat surprised. Zhou was so young, yet he already had such a cultivation realm. He imagined that Zhou Wen was Leng Zongjing's student. He had come to Luoyang with the intention of challenging Leng Zongjing. Wang Fei, Zhou Wen answered subconsciously. After Wang Fei left, many things had happened to Zhou Wen. He had little contact with his new tutor, and his impression of Wang Fei was still stuck at the time when she was a tutor. Furthermore, Wang Fei and Wang Mingyuan were both from Luoyang's Wang family. Zhou Wen was subconsciously more willing to acknowledge Wang Fei as his tutor. Sei Gasakai thought for a moment, but he had never heard of this name. In fact, Sei Gasakai didn't think much of the other tutors of Sunset College. He felt that the only person in Sunset College who was worth fighting was Chancellor Leng Zongjing. Therefore, he didn't know much about the other tutors of Sunset College. He only knew a few famous tutors. Although those mentors were relatively famous in the Federation, Sei Gasakai really didn't treat them as opponents. Although Zhou Wen wasn't a student taught by Leng Zongjing, since he was a student of Sunset College and had such achievements at such a young age, Sei Gasakai wanted to know how far Zhou Wen had reached. In the beginning, Sei Gasakai could tell that Zhou Wen's temperament and cultivation level were not bad. He was able to remain calm and composed in front of the master-disciple duo and was not affected by them. He felt that this young student was not bad. Later, Han Shinsakura tested Zhou Wen, hoping to force him to take action. Only then did Seiya realize that Zhou Wen was really extraordinary. His martial realm wasn't low, but he couldn't tell how high it was. If there's nothing else, I'd like to continue gaming. Zhou Wen lowered his head to continue gaming. Sei Gasakai did not comment. He looked at the peony outside the stone pavilion. A gust of wind blew, and a withered petal fell into the stone pavilion. He stretched out his slender fingers and caught the petal between his fingers. My young friend, take a look at this petal. Is there anything different about it? With that said, Sei Gasakai used his index and middle fingers to hold the petal in front of Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen immediately felt his body tremble slightly as he couldn't help but look up at Sei Gasakai. Sei Gasakai's finger wasn't fast, but when it landed in Zhou Wen's eyes, the scene was completely different. The vitality of the entire peony garden seemed to move with Sei Gasakai's finger. It was as though Sei Gasakai was the ruler of the peony garden. The peony garden that spanned 400 kilometers moved with his strength. Zhou Wen felt that he wasn't facing Sei Gasakai, but the billions of flowers in the entire peony garden. The power condensed on the petal was like the sea of flowers, making it impossible to see the end. He immediately felt immense pressure. Zhou Wen's expression was solemn as he sat on the bench. His fingers were like swords as he extended them towards the petal that Sei Gasakai had sent over and clamped onto the other side of the petal. In an instant, Zhou Wen felt a strange force surge at him. Flowers bloomed and withered as the sun rose and set. From life to death, Zhou Wen felt as though his body was rapidly aging. Time was rapidly passing. A strange glint flashed in Sei Gasakai's eyes. In the past, he had cultivated the Nitin Ichiryu. The so-called Nitin Ichiryu roughly meant that there was a sun and moon in the sky, and humans were split into yin and yang. The Nitin Ichiryu saber technique was also about yin and yang complementing each other. Nitin Ichiryu warriors typically held a tachi in their right hand and a small tachi in their left. One yang and one yin gave rise to infinite changes. Sei Gasakai was extremely talented. After experiencing the tempering and insights of many dimensional zones, not only had he mastered the Nitin Ichiryu to its limits, but he had also created a style based on the basics of the Nitin Ichiryu, allowing his strength to improve greatly. Not only did this style pay attention to yin and yang, but it also had a lot to do with time and life and death. Sei Gasakai hadn't named this style. This time, he had come to Luoyang to challenge Leng Zongjing. If he could defeat him, he planned on naming the style he had created. As Zhou Wen was a student of Sunset College, Sei Gasakai originally planned on using his newly created technique to test his mental cultivation and realm. He didn't really plan on fighting him. However, when he used the concept of withering glory in his saber technique, he realized that Zhou Wen wasn't moved at all. He wasn't affected at all. He couldn't help but gradually strengthen his sword Dao. Zhou Wen felt as though countless flowers had bloomed and withered. It was as though the entire peony garden had become a flower graveyard. He had also gone from young to old, as though he was about to die. Sei Gasakai couldn't help but be alarmed when he saw that Zhou Wen remained unmoved. He had already thought highly of Zhou Wen, but he never expected the youth in front of him to be stronger than he had imagined. He couldn't help but strengthen his sword Dao will, changing from the will of withering to the will of life and death. Han Shinsakura watched from the side, but he didn't feel anything. He only saw Zhou Wen and Sei Gasakai each holding a flower petal. One was standing while the other was sitting, motionless. Han Shinsakura was somewhat puzzled. He didn't know what his teacher, Sei Gasakai, was doing, but he didn't dare disturb him. All he could do was wait patiently by the side. However, as he watched, Han Shinsakura's eyes widened. His teacher, Sei Gasakai's hairband had snapped and his long hair scattered. His long black hair gradually turned white. In just a moment, his raven-black hair turned snow-white. "Teacher, what's wrong?" Han Shinsakura was alarmed. He hurriedly stood up and wanted to rush over to push Zhou Wen away. Bam! However, just as Han Shinsakura took a few steps towards Zhou Wen, he felt a terrifying force slam into him. His body involuntarily flew backward and landed outside the stone pavilion. Blood spewed out of his mouth as several of his bones were broken. He looked at Zhou Wen in horror and struggled several times, but he failed to get up. Chapter 504. After Zhou Wen came to the peony garden, he had been circulating the Tao Sutra. Sei Gasakai's sword Daos will press down on him, making him feel the ebb and flow of life and death. However, this pressure didn't waver Zhou Wen's will. Instead, he suddenly seemed to gain enlightenment. As Zhou Wen gained enlightenment, the Tao Sutra on his body underwent a strange change. His Tao body and essence, vitality, and spirit were trembling. His entire body and mind seemed to resonate with everything in the world, constantly changing and condensing in his body. At this moment, Zhou Wen actually began condensing the Tao Sutra's life soul. Sei Gasakai didn't know that his sword Dao's will was useless against Zhou Wen. Instead, it helped Zhou Wen, allowing him to constantly gain insight. Seeing that Zhou Wen remained unmoved, Sei Gasakai was alarmed and puzzled. He pushed the sword Dao he had comprehended to its limits. His essence energy had already fused into it. It was no longer as simple as a test. It was already a true competition. The sword force surged towards Zhou Wen through the flower petals the two of them were holding. This unnamed strike still failed to move Zhou Wen. Sei Gasakai had already pushed his sword intent to its limits, but Zhou Wen remained unmoved. His sword force, which contained the will of ebb and flow of life and death, vanished without a trace like a stone sinking into the sea when it struck Zhou Wen. Sei Gasakai was extremely alarmed. With the insights he had gained from this strike, he had pushed his life soul to the perfect stage. Furthermore, he had planned on using this strike to challenge Leng Zhongzheng. However, to his surprise, this strike couldn't even do a thing to a student from Sunset College. Instantly, Sei Gasakai felt despair. He felt like he had nothing to live for as his black hair turned white in a short period of time. Unbeknownst to Sei Gasakai, it was impossible for his strike to be ineffective against Leng Zhongzheng. However, Zhou Wen's Tao body and the life soul that was condensing were the nemesis of his strike. If he used his life soul to fight Zhou Wen would definitely not be his match. However, with the power of life and death in this strike, he couldn't do a thing to Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen felt that his essence, vitality, and spirit were gathering towards his brain. The power of Sei Gasakai's strike was also being sucked in. Some power in the world was also flowing towards his brain like a river flowing in reverse. Zhouwen felt a crystal condense in his mind. The crystal was very strange, as though it was in his brain, but it wasn't anywhere in his brain. It was as though it only existed in his consciousness, but Zhouwen could clearly sense its existence. Once the life soul was formed, Zhouwen immediately felt refreshed as though he had been reborn. Endless primordial energy surged out of the crystal-like life soul, making him feel like he was bathing in a clear spring. Sei Gasakai couldn't accept the fact that he was inferior to a student of Sunset College. He couldn't accept that the sword Tao he had comprehended over the years was useless. When Zhouwen's life soul condensed, the power fluctuations of the life soul also caused Sei Gasakai's life soul to tremble. A demonic and godlike sword soul appeared on Sei Gasakai's body. Han Shinsakura was dumbfounded. He never expected that his teacher, the famous sword hero Sei Gasakai, would use his life soul in a battle with a student. That was a perfect grade life soul, Samsara Sword Holy. Countless epic experts had been defeated by Sei Gasakai's Samsara Sword Holy. It was a supreme existence that had the power of life and death. In the next second, Han Shinsakura saw Sei Gasakai's white hair flutter. The Samsara Sword Holy and Sei Gasakai fused as one. A katana condensed from light and darkness appeared in Sei Gasakai's hand. As for the petal, it had already been melted by the terrifying power. Sei Gasakai held the katana in his hand. In his despair, he no longer had any other thoughts. All he wanted was to prove himself and his sword Tao. He slashed down at Zhouwen. Wherever the saber beam passed, the surrounding sea of flowers was affected by the saber force. Half of the flowers bloomed, while the other half withered. It was like the difference between heaven and hell. Teacher actually used this strike? Han Shinsakura was extremely shocked. Not only had Sei Gasakai used his life soul, but he had also used his strongest strike. Han Shinsakura had only heard of this strike from his father, but he had never seen it before. It was because of Sei Gasakai's strike that his father, who was originally on par with Sei Gasakai, finally decided to hand his most beloved son, Han Shinsakura, to Sei Gasakai for guidance. Furthermore, he held Sei Gasakai in high regard, saying that he was the number one person in the sword Tao. Han Shinsakura followed Sei Gasakai and wanted to learn this strike the most. However, Sei Gasakai had never used it before, so he had never seen it before. Today was the first time he had seen this strike. However, the strike that Han Shinsakura described as being able to slay demons and gods was actually used by Sei Gasakai to fight a student. This left Han Shinsakura in disbelief. However, he finally saw the might of this strike. It was truly a demonic and godlike strike. Just by being affected by the power of the blade, the peony garden turned into hell. All the flowers withered. Such power was truly awe-inspiring. It's no wonder even a figure like father holds teacher in such high regard. Who in the world can match such a powerful strike? Han Shinsakura marveled inwardly. However, in the next second, Han Shinsakura was stunned on the spot. His eyes widened to the extreme as his pupils constricted like a needle tip. He looked into the stone pavilion in disbelief. Zhouwen was still sitting on the bench in the stone pavilion. He wasn't moved by Sei Gasakai's demonic and godlike strike, nor did he have any intention of standing up. All he did was hold a green bamboo in his hand. A saber beam appeared. There was actually a saber in the green bamboo. Han Shinsakura had never seen such a gorgeous and domineering move. As the bewitching saber beam tore through the void, it also left an indelible mark in Han Shinsakura's mind. When Han Shinsakura wanted to see the saber beam clearly, he realized that the bamboo blade had already returned to its scabbard as though it had never moved. However, when he looked at Sei Gasakai again, the saber formed from light and darkness in his hand suddenly shattered, turning into specks of starlight that dissipated. The terrifying saber intent also shattered. I lost. Seigasakai stood there and looked at Jōun in a daze, but his eyes seemed to lose focus. Han Shinsakura sat on the ground. He couldn't accept this outcome. Seigasakai, the man known as the #1 sword hero, his teacher, had actually been defeated by a student who wasn't much older than him. Looking at Jōun, who was still sitting in the stone pavilion, Han Shinsakura suddenly felt that it might not be a person, but a devil. That strike just now had the power of a devil. However, that gorgeous saber had left an indelible mark in the depths of his soul. He couldn't help but think about it over and over again. Chapter 505. Teacher. Han Shinsakura suddenly saw a thin line of blood appear on Seigasakai's neck. He couldn't help but turn pale with fright as he wanted to rush over. If I were you, I wouldn't touch him, Jōun said. When Han Shinsakura heard Jōun's words, his body trembled. He stood outside the stone pavilion and didn't rush in. He stared at Jōun and gritted his teeth. Sir, you have already won. Do you still want to kill me? Jōun pointed at Seigasakai and said, I'm not a homicidal maniac. Why would I kill him? Your teacher is probably having a mental battle. I don't know what the consequences will be if you disturb him. Han Shinsakura looked at Seigasakai suspiciously. Seeing that he was standing there in a daze, his eyes empty, and the wound on his neck was only a superficial wound and not very deep, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. What's the name of the strike your teacher used? Jōun asked Han Shinsakura. Just now, because he had seen Seigasakai's sword intent, he had gained some insight into the meaning of life and death. He then understood the relationship between man and nature, allowing his Tao body to condense a life soul. From this, it could be seen that Seigasakai's move was indeed powerful. Han Shinsakura didn't dare underestimate Jōun anymore. Although the two of them were about the same age, Han Shinsakura treated him as a junior. He answered cautiously, that move doesn't have a name yet. It's a saber technique my teacher created using the Nitin Ichiryu as a foundation. Then, he comprehended the 4 seasons withering and samsara. I see. Jōun nodded slightly and stood up to leave. He had come to the peony garden to see if he could condense a Tao body life soul. Although the peony garden hadn't helped him, Seigasakai had helped him. It could be considered a lucky hit. 0 taboo, primordial body heaven-man unity, impervious to all arts. With the appearance of the life soul, the word taboo behind the essence energy vanished. This was a life soul condensed from a Tao body. It was somewhat odd. It was a crystal in one's consciousness. It seemed corporeal, but it also didn't seem corporeal. It was this life soul that had blocked Seigasakai's move from life to death, rendering the withering death power useless against Jōun. Therefore, Jōun was able to defeat Seigasakai. In terms of pure strength, Seigasakai's perfect stage Samsara Sword Holy was much stronger than Jōun's life soul. If he hadn't used that move and purely used ordinary essence energy to fight Jōun's strike wouldn't have been able to win so cleanly. Upon seeing Jōun walk out of the stone pavilion, Han Shinsakura asked anxiously, How's teacher? I didn't hurt him. It's just that there are some things he can't figure out. He will naturally recover once he figures it out, Jōun said without turning his head. Han Shinsakura hesitated for a moment. Seeing that Jōun was about to leave, he finally couldn't help but shout at Jōun's back, What's the name of that strike of yours? Transcendent Flying Immortal, Jōun answered as he walked. Soon, he disappeared into the flowers. Transcendent, flying, immortal. The gorgeous strike flashed across Han Shinsakura's mind again. That stance shocked his soul, making him unable to forget it. One of them stood in the stone pavilion in a daze, while the other stood outside the stone pavilion in a daze. After a while, Han Shinsakura suddenly heard an exclamation and hurriedly turned to look at Sei Gasakai in the stone pavilion. Sei Gasakai spat out a mouthful of blood. Han Shinsakura hurriedly rushed in to help Sei Gasakai. "Teacher, what's wrong?" Sei Gasakai spat out a mouthful of blood, but his expression was much better. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and revealed a smile. I see. It's no wonder I never gave that strike a name. Turns out that deep in my heart, I already knew that this strike wasn't correct. Now, I finally understand where I was wrong with that said. Sei Gasakai looked around, but he didn't see Zhou. He asked, "Where is Zhou Wenjun?" "He went back," Han Shinsakura answered. "Why didn't you stop him?" Sei Gasakai blurted out. Han Shinsakura thought to himself, if even you can't stop him, how can I stop him? Han Shinsakura naturally didn't say that out loud. Sei Gasakai probably realized that what he had said was wrong, so he asked Han Shinsakura, "Did you ask him what the name of that strike was?" "He said it's called Transcendent Flying Immortal," Han Shinsakura replied. Sei Gasakai nodded and said, "So that strike is called Transcendent Flying Immortal. My saber technique has taken the wrong path. I blindly pursued the art of life and death, but I lost the true essence of the Nitin Ichiryu. To think that I was arrogant enough to think that my sword Dao had reached the pinnacle and wanted to challenge Leng Zongjing. I never expected a student from Sunset College to be able to crack my sword technique. That's good. After this battle, I've finally seen the path ahead. I have to go back and revise my saber technique. Are you still willing to cultivate with me?" A teacher for a day, a father for life. Han Shinsakura immediately bowed. "All right, let's go back now. I want to revise my saber technique. In the future, my sect will be called Nitin Flying Immortal Ryu," Sei Gasakai said seriously. "Nitin Flying Immortal Ryu?" Han Shinsakura looked at Sei Gasakai in puzzlement. "My sword Dao comes from the Nitin Ichiryu, and the strike that Zhou Wenjun used to wake me up is called Transcendent Flying Immortal. To show my respect, my sect will be called Nitin Flying Immortal Ryu. I hope that after you inherit my sword Dao in the future, you can improve further and use my Nitin Flying Immortal Ryu's saber technique to defeat his Transcendent Flying Immortal," Sei Gasakai said. "Nitin Flying Immortal Ryu?" Han Shinsakura muttered to himself as he couldn't help but recall Zhou Wen's gorgeous strike. The master and disciple didn't look for Leng Zongjing and left Luoyang. Zhou Wen didn't take this matter to heart, but he didn't know that the Nitin Flying Immortal Ryu would become a mainstream sword Dao sect overseas in the future. After returning to his dorm, Zhou Wen began studying the Zero Taboo Life Soul. He wanted to know what use it had. At present, he knew that it could eliminate the power of death, but this was clearly not the true use of Zero Taboo. After launching the game dungeon, Zhou Wen entered the metalwork temple, hoping to see if Zero Taboo could block the power of flames. However, the outcome was tragic. The blood-colored avatar was nearly burned to death. Can't it block the power of flames? Zhou Wen gritted his teeth and changed dungeons. He went to the music temple, hoping to see if he could withstand the sound wave. However, it was useless. After activating Zero Taboo, the outcome was the same as not activating it. The sound wave struck the blood-colored avatar, sending it flying several meters away. It made Zhou Wen twitch in pain. It can't be? Could it be that this thing can only block the power of death? Just as Zhou Wen was feeling depressed, he saw a sun beast rush out of the palace. Zhou Wen didn't wish to try again. He summoned the six-winged guardian dragon and got it to kill the sun beast. Zhou Wen had grinded so many times without a companion egg dropping. This time, he didn't even think about it, but he never expected the sun beast to drop a companion egg. It's finally here. Zhou Wen threw the matter of Zero Taboo to the back of his mind as his emotions turned complicated. With the sun beast, he could finally fight the torch dragon. Chapter 506. Zhou Wen couldn't kill many sun beasts, but this was the first time he had seen it clearly. As the light on the sun beast's body was too strong, it usually looked like a small sun. However, in fact, the sun beast was a crystalline beast. It wasn't big, and its entire body emitted an intense light. Sun beast, epic life providence, son of the sun life soul, sun's radiant strength, 39 speed, 38 constitution, 39 essence energy, 39 talent skill, sun arc companion form, crystal mirror. Zhou summoned the sun beast and transformed it into its companion form. A sun disk-like mirror appeared in his hand. It looked extremely exquisite, and the mirror could clearly reflect Zhou shadow. It was in no way inferior to the current glass mirror. In fact, it was even clearer. Looking at the crystal mirror, Zhou thought of a problem. This mirror was more than enough to block his face. It could barely block his chest, but it was impossible for it to block his entire body behind the mirror. Zhou didn't know if blocking a portion of his body was useful against Torch Dragon's bright torch vision world. With the Sun Beast, Zhou activated the game dungeon and planned on giving it a try. He arrived at the temple again and summoned the six-winged guardian dragon, allowing it to charge into the temple as the vanguard. Under Zhou's control, the blood-colored avatar cooperated with the six-winged guardian dragon to deal with Torch Dragon. As Zhou didn't know when Torch Dragon would use Bright Torch Vision World, he kept paying attention to Torch Dragon's eyes. Torch Dragon's eyes were usually dim. When it used Bright Torch Vision World, it would first brighten before turning into a mirror. This process was very short, just an instant. Zhou had to summon the Sun Beast when Torch Dragon happened to use Bright Torch Vision World. This was also difficult. As the Sun Beast was only at the epic stage, it couldn't withstand the terrifying combat strength if it was summoned too early. Therefore, Zhou could only do so. He couldn't be more familiar with Torch Dragon. When Torch Dragon used Bright Torch Vision World, Zhou summoned the crystal mirror before it could and blocked the blood-colored avatar's face. In the next second, Zhou saw a strange scene. The crystal mirror and blood-colored avatar's face were indeed fine, but its body disappeared. Then, the game screen went black. The Dharch didn't lie to me. The mirror is indeed useful, but this crystal mirror is a little too small. Zhou wasn't discouraged. Now that he knew that the mirror could restrain Torch Dragon, killing it was only a matter of time. He went online to search for information again to see if there were any larger mirror companion eggs, but he was somewhat disappointed. The mirror companion beasts he knew were relatively small in size. It was basically impossible for them to accommodate a person hiding behind a mirror. The largest known companion beast mirror was a magic mirror in the West District. However, it was at the mythical stage. The 6 families had yet to crack it. From the looks of it, getting a large mirror won't work. Is there any other way? Zhou thought hard about how to use a smaller crystal mirror to perfectly crack the Bright Torch Vision World. Zhou constantly thought of new strategies and tried them out. He spent most of his time grinding dungeons every day. Before Zhou could finish off Torch Dragon, he obtained a 3-eyed Golden Warrior companion egg. Zhou fused it with the epic Golden Warrior he had previously fused. It was also a Golden Warrior, but the compatibility was only about 60. After hesitating for a moment, he chose to fuse it. Then, he watched as the Golden Warrior and 3-eyed Golden Warrior companion egg were gradually engulfed by the light before finally fusing into one. When the light dissipated, a Golden Warrior appeared on the game screen. Only then did Zhou's heart ease up. After fusing again, the Golden Warrior's stats increased significantly, reaching more than 30. Furthermore, his luck was rather different. As a supplementary material, the 3-eyed Golden Warrior's invincible golden body skill was retained. This way, the Golden Warrior had 3 skills: Golden Bell, Invincible Golden Body, and Fist of War. Fist of War was useless against Zhou. The main reason was that the 2 skills, Golden Bell and Invincible Golden Body, greatly enhanced his defense. When he went to the temple to fight Torch Dragon again, Zhou summoned the Golden Warrior to see how strong its defense was. The outcome surprised Zhou. The Golden Warrior used Golden Bell and Invincible Golden Body at the same time. With the augmentation of the Blessed Combat Runes, it managed to withstand Torch Dragon's tail strike. Its body slammed into the palace wall, but it didn't suffer any serious injuries. This seemingly ordinary Golden Warrior managed to withstand 4 of Torch Dragon's attacks before it was killed. This was already beyond Zhou Wen's expectations. Among epic companion beasts, there weren't many that could withstand a single strike from Torch Dragon. For the Golden Warrior to withstand 4 strikes was already considered heaven-defying. Unfortunately, the Golden Warrior couldn't block Bright Torch Vision World either. This Golden Warrior looks like an ordinary Golden Warrior, but its strength far exceeds that of a Golden Warrior. If an ordinary person were to treat it as a Golden Warrior, they would probably suffer greatly. This is an advantage. Zhou thought to himself if he should find a publicly recognized weak companion beast in the future and fuse all sorts of powerful skills onto it. This way, he could catch enemies by surprise. Upon thinking of weak companion beasts, Zhou thought of the lucky baby tiger. This fellow was indeed the weakest among epic companion beasts. Apart from its luck stat, it was nothing. When another baby tiger is farmed in the future, I'll try and see if I can fuse it into a powerful baby tiger. Zhou summoned the Golden Warrior and transformed it into golden soft armor. He realized that it was somewhat different the moment he put it on. The soft armor that a typical Golden Warrior transformed into was woven from golden threads. It was pure gold in color and didn't have any patterns. Zhou Wen's soft armor had shimmering Blessed Combat Runes on it. It looked extremely dazzling. Zhou didn't like being dazzling because it would make him an eye-catching target. The Golden Warrior transforms into soft armor. It can also wear armor outside. I can use the Runic Heavy Armored Warrior as the main ingredient and the Golden Warrior Companion Egg as a supplementary ingredient. I can fuse a Runic Heavy Armored Warrior with the Golden Body Life Providence. Zhou did as he said. It wasn't difficult for the Runic Heavy Armored Warrior and Golden Warrior to drop, but there was a problem during the fusion. After the two fused, the Runic Heavy Armored Warrior didn't obtain the Golden Warrior Life Providence. It was still its original Life Providence, but it had one more skill. He attempted the fusion several times, but the results were different every time. Sometimes there were more skills and sometimes there were fewer. Only on the 3rd try did he produce a Runic Heavy Armored Warrior with the Golden Body Life Providence and Blessed Combat Runes Life Soul. However, the Runic Heavy Armored Warrior didn't have a single skill. Chapter 507. While he was crazily grinding dungeons for pet fusion, something strange happened in Luoyang City. A crossroads in the city was blocked by a huge black cube. The black cube was about 50 meters long and was extremely huge. It didn't look like metal, nor did it look like stone or plastic. Strangely, no one knew when the black cube appeared. And Sheng, who was in charge of investigating this matter, looked at the nearby surveillance cameras and realized that the black cube seemed to have appeared out of thin air. It wasn't visible in the video a second ago, but it appeared the next second. Such a strange thing was most likely related to dimensional creatures. In order to prevent any accidents, Sheng gathered many experts in the Sunset Army to study how to move or destroy the black cube. However, despite using many methods, they failed to move the black cube away, nor did they damage it. Even the strongest destructive weapons and essence energy skills they could use failed to damage the black cube at all. Someone wanted to dig up the cement road under the black cube and use some tools to move it away. However, they soon realized that the black cube was actually floating in the air. After the ground was dug up, it didn't affect it at all. It still couldn't be moved. Although the black cube didn't pose a threat, Sheng still made plans for the worst. He evacuated the nearby residents and temporarily isolated the area. He sent troops to guard it to prevent any accident. In less than 2 days, Anxing received a lot of news. The results were shocking. It turned out that it wasn't just Luoyang. Many cities in the Federation's 4 major districts had the same black cube. Now, everyone was studying the black cube. Up to now, no one could determine what it was, nor could anyone destroy or move it. Many people were as worried as Anxing. The black cube was like a huge time bomb in the city. It was unknown when it would cause a terrifying disaster. Phenomena are appearing frequently. These days are getting more and more restless, Anxing said with a sigh. And Tianzhua was reading the intelligence from all over the world. Even the cities of the 6 families had black cubes appear. Furthermore, the 6 families couldn't do anything about them. The 6 families had sent out mythical companion beasts to destroy or figure out what the black cube was, but the outcome wasn't good. The power of mythical companion beasts couldn't injure the black cube. And Tianzhua frowned as he read the intelligence from all over the world. The appearance of black cubes all over the world was obviously very unusual. Have you realized that these black cubes only appear in areas where humans gather? There are no black cubes in the wilderness or dimensional zones, and Tianzhua said. Do you suspect that this is a conspiracy against humans? And Xing immediately understood what Tianzhua meant. Although I don't want to see that happen, the analysis of all the phenomena indicates that the black cubes are targeting humans. And Tianzhua's expression was solemn. Block whatever comes. Overseer, have you ever been afraid of anyone? And Xing deliberately said in a relaxed tone. And Tianzhua smiled and didn't say anything else. He asked Xing, how's the progress at Zhuelu? There's no progress. After analyzing for so long, the experts have roughly guessed that the snake is the legendary torch dragon. The other mythical creature is one of the 4 ferocious beasts, Qiongqi. Apart from that, there's no progress. Unless a mythical creature intervenes, it's impossible to break through the temple, Xing said. How's the mood of the person at home? And Tianzhua paused before asking. She looks the same as usual. She eats whatever she likes and buys whatever she likes, but I can tell that madam still can't let it go, Xing said. After a long silence, Tianzhua suddenly said, How long does it take to make a round trip to Zhuelu? And Xing's expression changed drastically when he heard that. Overseer, absolutely not. You absolutely can't go to Zhuelu. The strength of Torch Dragon and Qiongqi are still unknown. We haven't even figured out what abilities they have. It's too dangerous for you to go like this. If we don't figure out if grandfather is in the temple, I'm afraid the person at home won't be at ease, and Tianzhua said. Overseer, if you are trapped inside, Madam won't just be sad. Furthermore, something as strange as the black cube has appeared. A huge problem might happen at any moment. We can't leave this place without you, and Xing said solemnly. And Tianzhua's expression changed when he heard that. After a long while, he sighed and said, Ah Xing, in the past, we only wanted to truly grasp the family and Luoyang in our hands. Back then, we thought that we would no longer have any scruples and could do whatever we wanted. Now we have truly become the owners of this place, but we realize that our scruples have increased. And Xing looked at Tianzhua and said seriously, the fewer things a person carries, the fewer scruples they will have. Overseer, you carry too many things. Perhaps. And Tianzhua got up and walked to the window. He looked at the black cube on the city streets as his expression turned more complicated. Zhouwen had fused many times, but he hadn't obtained a satisfactory runic heavy-armored warrior. All he could do was use the skillless runic heavy-armored warrior. Old Zhou, have you heard? A mysterious cube has appeared on the streets of the city, Li Xian said mysteriously when he came to find Zhouwen. What mysterious cube? Zhouwen had been focused on grinding dungeons recently. Apart from delivering breakfast to Wang Lu, he had almost never left the house. No one had told him. You actually don't know? Li Xian recounted the recent mysterious appearance of the black cube. It's not just our Luoyang. I heard that similar black cubes have appeared all over the world. However, no one knows what they are. Zhouwen couldn't help but frown when he heard that. He was also worried. If the black cube contained a few mythical creatures, the consequences would be unimaginable. Li Xian chatted with Zhouwen for a while before he suddenly recalled something. He smiled and said to Zhouwen, "Gu Dian looks like a ruthless character, but he's actually a coward." "Why do you say that?" Zhouwen asked curiously. "Didn't we organize an event previously and invited Gu Dian along? Feng Ruoshi brought her pet cat over. That pet cat wasn't afraid of Gu Dian's ferocious appearance and even jumped onto him. When Gu Dian saw the cat, a person who usually looks so ferocious actually sat on the ground in fright. His legs went limp and he couldn't even stand up. He just sat there and retreated as though he was afraid that the cat would eat him. Don't you think it's funny? That punk usually looks quite manly, but I never expected him to be so cowardly." As Li Xian spoke, he didn't notice Zhouwen's odd expression. Chapter 508. After Li Xian left, Zhouwen went online to check the news regarding the black cube. As this matter was too huge and there were too many of them, it was impossible to completely cover it up. Therefore, many places had already been exposed regarding the black cube. There were also quite a number of clear pictures. He couldn't tell anything from the picture. It was just a huge black cube. What the hell is this thing? I wonder if the Dharch knows what it is? Just as Zhouwen was thinking about how to ask the Dharch, he suddenly received a message from the Dharch. "Where you are now, did a black cube appear?" Seeing that the Dharch had actually mentioned this matter, Zhouwen hurriedly replied, "Yes, many of them suddenly appeared in the world. I wonder what they are?" "If I were you, I would take my mythical companion beast to the cube now," the Dharch replied. "Why would I have any mythical companion beast?" Zhouwen denied. "What's that on your ear?" "Don't tell me that's an earring you bought online," the Dharch said. "Why would I bring a mythical companion beast there? What's that black cube?" Zhouwen never expected the Dharch to recognize Truth Listener long ago, but he wasn't surprised. He was just somewhat curious. The Dharch clearly knew what the black cube was. "I don't want to tell you what it is, but as long as you bring a mythical companion beast there will definitely be benefit. Do you dare to go?" "Before long," the Dharch replied. Zhouwen frowned when he saw this. He didn't know what the Dharch was up to. He didn't trust the Dharch at all. He was most afraid that she would scheme against him again. "The people from the 6 families have already brought mythical companion beasts over, but I don't see them obtaining any benefits?" Zhouwen replied without saying if he wanted to go. "How can those mortals know its benefits? You have my guidance, so of course it's different." The Dharch immediately sent another message. "After you find the black cube, take your mythical companion beast to the top of the black cube. In the middle, there's a dot there. Let your mythical companion beast stand there and release its essence energy with all its might. Shoot it into the dot. Remember, it can only be a mythical companion beast. Your essence energy has to be injected into the dot or you will have to bear the consequences." "What happens after the cube is opened?" Zhouwen asked. "Why don't you give it a try yourself? If you don't have the guts, wait for someone else to open the cube. After all, even if you don't take the huge benefits, there are plenty of people who want them." The Dharch replied to the last message and ignored Zhouwen. Zhouwen was instantly in a dilemma. The Dharch was clearly teasing him. She deliberately didn't say what the black cube was to make him feel conflicted. "You're underestimating me if you want me to doubt life just like that." Zhouwen packed his things and planned on taking a look at the black cube. Zhouwen planned on using his phone to take a photo. The black cube was definitely something from the dimension. Perhaps the mysterious phone would react to it. When the time came, it wouldn't be too late to decide if he should follow the Thearka's method. Zhouwen didn't dare go openly. He took advantage of the night to sneak to the spot where he had discovered the black cube. There were troops stationed there, but it was mainly to prevent the black cube from mutating. It wasn't to prevent humans from approaching, so it wasn't difficult to approach. Zhou arrived at the roof of a nearby building. This place was already very close to the black cube. Standing at the edge of the roof, he was only about 10 meters away from a corner of the black cube. Although it was night, Zhou could see it clearly with his eyesight. However, he couldn't tell what material it was. It didn't look like metal, nor did it look like stone. It didn't look like keratin or bone. It looked a little like an artificial material. What the hell is this thing? I hope the mysterious phone can take a picture. Zhou held the mysterious phone and aimed it at the black cube. However, Zhou was somewhat disappointed because the mysterious phone didn't move. There was no lockbox. Clearly, it wasn't interested in the black cube. This placed Zhou in a difficult position. The Dharch had said that there were great benefits, but what if she was lying to him? It wouldn't be good if he really did as the Dharch said and released a few demon king-level dimensional creatures. However, on careful thought, Zhou felt that the Dharch didn't have any reason to do so. If the Dharch really wanted to mess with him, she could just use her wishing ability. There was no need to go through so much trouble to trick him here. Furthermore, he hadn't delivered the items the Dharch had asked him to buy. If he were to release a few terrifying creatures, who would the Dharch ask for the items if he died first? Although the Dharch made it sound easy, as though she could find someone to deliver things to her at any time, how many humans would dare to go to Chess Mountain? There weren't many who dared to enter Chess Mountain to obtain the Void Flower. Zhou suspected that there was only one pot of Void Flower in Chess Mountain. After some thought, he felt that the Dharch wouldn't let him die so easily. Zhou decided to give it a try. Zhou was already prepared. He wore the most ordinary runic heavy-armored warrior armor. This armor could cover his entire body. Furthermore, it was relatively common on the Peninsula of Gods. Even if he was discovered, it wouldn't be easy to figure out who he was. The troops stationed around the cube were all around it, and there was no one above it. Taking advantage of the night, Zhou pushed ghost steps to its limits. Like a wisp of black smoke, he traversed more than 10 meters and landed on the black cube without anyone noticing. After stepping into the black cube, nothing abnormal happened. Zhou heaved a sigh of relief and secretly walked towards the center. In the middle, Zhou indeed discovered the circle the Dharch had mentioned. The black cube was about 50 meters long, but the circle was only the size of a palm. Furthermore, it was only a shallow circular mark. If Zhou didn't know that it was useful, he wouldn't have noticed it. Which mythical companion beast should I use to try it out? Zhou thought to himself. Excluding Tyrant Behemoth, which was in the midst of evolution, Zhou still had 4 mythical pets he could use. Truth Listener, Banana Fairy, Demonic Neonate, and 6-Winged. However, the first 3 hadn't truly reached the mythical stage. Now, only 6-Winged was at the mythical stage. He sized up his surroundings and saw that there was no one above him. Even if he summoned 6-Winged, no one would see him. Zhou decided to summon 6-Winged. After all, if anything happened, 6-Winged was at the mythical stage and should be able to handle it. However, Truth Listener and Banana Fairy might be instantly killed. Chapter 509. 6-Winged was summoned by Zhou. Its gigantic body wasn't too eye-catching when it stood on the cube. However, its claws were a little too large. The small circle was completely covered by its claws, and it was many times larger. Zhou didn't know if this would work. Let's give it a try. Zhou was very careful. He didn't let the 6-Winged guardian dragon immediately make an attempt. He only got it to stand there while he retreated and returned to the roof of a nearby building. Then, he got the 6-Winged guardian dragon to inject its essence energy into the circle. If anything happened, he could immediately unsummon the 6-Winged guardian dragon and escape. Although he felt that the possibility of the Dharch harming him wasn't high, He had to be careful. The six-winged guardian dragon followed Zhou Wen's orders and pressed its claws on the circle, injecting its essence energy into it. Although Zhou Wen was already mentally prepared, he was still alarmed the moment the six-winged guardian dragon injected its essence energy into him. The entire black cube instantly emitted a bright light, illuminating the surroundings. Zhou Wen was alarmed. He wanted to unsummon the six-winged guardian dragon, but he realized that the six-winged guardian dragon seemed to be sucked into the black cube. It couldn't be unsummoned. Zhou Wen's expression changed drastically when he saw the black cube's current situation. It was no longer a black cube. It was basically a huge six-sided screen. The four sides were lit up, turning into liquid crystal screens. There were even images on them. The image was naturally none other than the six-winged guardian dragon standing on the cube. Furthermore, it was in its six-winged form after the life soul appeared. The scene was obvious. The four sides of the six-winged guardian dragon had a 50-meter-long super-high-definition screen. It was many times clearer than any 4K HD screen. Even the subtle dark lines on the scales of the six-winged guardian dragon could be seen clearly. The 50-meter-tall screen could be seen from more than 5 kilometers away. As long as one wasn't asleep and was outside, they could see the scene on the cube from all directions. Furthermore, the top of the cube was glowing brightly, illuminating the six-winged guardian dragon like a statue. It would be strange if one couldn't see it. Now, Zhou Wen was secretly glad that he wasn't standing on it. Otherwise, he would really be famous. The military was alarmed, the reporters were alarmed, and the gossipy masses were alarmed. As a result, the phones were about to explode. In just 2 or 3 minutes, the originally quiet night suddenly became lively. People rushed to the streets or ran up tall buildings to look in the direction of the cube. Dear viewers, this is today's Express program team. I'm reporter Xiao Jing. We're risking our lives to broadcast for you. Just a minute ago, the black cube that suddenly appeared on the street a few days ago suddenly shone brightly. We could see that the side of the cube had become an ultra-high-definition screen, and on the cube was a terrifying dimensional creature. It looked like a dragon from the West District's mythology. Furthermore, it had 6 wings and terrifying black flames burned on its body. It's very likely that it escaped from the cube. Will such a terrifying creature bring a huge disaster to our city? The Dharch tricked me again. Zhou Wen was somewhat dumbfounded. He kept trying to retract the 6-winged dark dragon, but he couldn't. The army had already taken action. Furthermore, he could hear the sirens of police cars everywhere. Clearly, they were rushing over. Now, the 6-winged guardian dragon is completely famous. I'm afraid everyone in Luoyang knows about it. Zhou Wen tried time and time again to retract the 6-winged guardian dragon, but he failed. Unfortunately, Zhou Wen's thoughts were too simple. It wasn't just everyone in Luoyang who knew about it. In fact, the moment the 6-winged guardian dragon activated the black cubes all over the world lit up. At the same time, they displayed the image of the 6-winged guardian dragon. The upper echelons and ordinary people of all the cities in the Federation watched the heroic appearance of the 6-winged guardian dragon from all angles. Even those who didn't see the cube's screen with their own eyes had definitely seen the various headlines on their phones. Without a doubt, the 6-winged guardian dragon and the cube were on the headlines at the same time. This happened in just a few minutes. Now, people all over the world knew about the existence of the 6-winged guardian dragon. Just as Zhou Wen was feeling anxious, he saw the cube's screen change again. The image of the 6-winged guardian dragon vanished and turned into a ranking. On the ranking, there were rankings from 1 to 100. However, the other rankings were empty. Only the name of the 6-winged guardian dragon appeared on the first spot. It looked like it was the only one seeking defeat. Everyone in the Federation looked at the lonely name on the cube. No one knew what was going on, nor did they know what it represented. What the hell is this thing? Zhou Wen was equally confused, but he saw that the six-winged guardian dragon's body seemed to have undergone some subtle changes in the light. After a full 3 minutes, the military and the media's helicopters rushed over. Only then did the light around the six-winged guardian dragon disappear. Zhou, who had been trying to retract the six-winged guardian dragon, finally succeeded. The six-winged guardian dragon vanished and the glowing cube dimmed, returning to its pure black appearance. Without any hesitation, Zhou fled stealthily. Now all of Luoyang was in chaos. There were people everywhere on the streets and upstairs. All sorts of vehicles and helicopters were everywhere, but no one noticed Zhou. When Zhou left, he saw the car that Enxing usually drove. Clearly, he had rushed over as well, but he didn't know if Tianzuo was sitting inside. Beep, 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 beep. Zhou was on the way back when he heard a message on his phone. When he opened it, he saw that it was from the Dart. I never expected you to have a true mythical companion beast. I've underestimated you. Not bad, not bad. That's not my companion beast. Zhou suppressed the depression in his heart and denied it. However, the Dart didn't seem to believe him at all. She sent another message. I'm not lying to you. Take a closer look at your six-winged guardian dragon and see if there are any changes. There will be a surprise. I already said that it's not my companion beast. Zhou was slightly taken aback when he heard that. He sent a message to the Dart before taking out his mysterious phone to look at the six-winged guardian dragon's information. Indeed, the information on the six-winged guardian dragon had undergone a huge change. He carefully looked at the data and was immediately pleasantly surprised. Chapter 510. Six-Winged Guardian Dragon, Mythical Life Providence, Life Guardian Dragon Life Soul, Wings of Black Flame Wheel of Destiny, Final Life Guardian Strength, 80 Speed, 80 Constitution, 80 Essence Energy, 80 Talent Skill, Sanctification, Poison Breath, Dragon's Rage, Hell Demonic Flame, Six-Winged / Companion Form, Holy Flaming Dragon Wings. Zhou remembered that the six-winged guardian dragon's stats in the past should have been in the 60s, but now all of them had become 80s. According to the advancement of companion beasts, the top mythical creatures should have 81 stats. Now that the six-winged guardian dragon's stats had reached 80, it could be considered second best. The Life Providence and Wheel of Destiny had undergone subtle changes. He didn't know what the word life was for, but it wasn't a bad thing. There was an additional sanctification among the skills, making it 5 skills. It was clearly an improvement. The demonic flaming dragon wings had also become holy flaming dragon wings. How is it? Are you pleasantly surprised? The Dart sent another message. Seeing that the Dart had already determined that the six-winged guardian dragon was his companion beast, Zhou tacitly agreed. He asked, "Can I obtain the enhancement as long as I go to the black cube to verify it?" Dream on. This is a reward for the first companion beast to enter the rankings. There's only one chance. You got a huge bargain. Soon, the Dart sent a second message. However, your six-winged guardian dragon's potential isn't good enough. You might as well let your earring be enhanced. It should be able to directly advance to the mythical stage. Zhou didn't regret not listening to the Dart. It was good that Truth Listener advanced to the mythical stage, but Truth Listener was more inclined to support abilities. Now, Zhou needed actual combat strength. After the six-winged guardian dragon's enhancement, its strength would likely increase significantly. When fighting Torch Dragon, its effects would also greatly increase, increasing Zhou's chances of killing Torch Dragon. Zhou's phone rang again, but this time, it wasn't a message from the Dart, but Enxing. Enxing and Zhou had killed the six-winged guardian dragon together. He also knew that Zhou had lured Medusa into a battle with the six-winged guardian dragon, so he immediately guessed that the six-winged guardian dragon was Zhou's. "Young Master One, what's the situation with the black cube?" And Xing didn't stand on ceremony with Zhou Wen and went straight to the point. Zhou Wen recounted what he knew, only omitting the matter regarding the arch. You mean that the cube is actually a ranking of companion beasts? And Xing said after some thought. From the looks of it, that's indeed the case. However, we can't rule out the possibility that there's something else inside the black cube. Otherwise, the six-winged guardian dragon wouldn't have been strengthened, Zhou Wen said. And Xing's tone became much more relaxed. That's good too. Previously, Overseer was worried about the cube. From the looks of it, the cube shouldn't pose a threat in the short term. By the way, congratulations, young Master One. You are now the third person in Luoyang to have a mythical creature. And Xing sighed and said, back when you first came to Luoyang, you were still at the mortal stage. In less than a year, you even have a mythical companion beast. In terms of speed, even the geniuses of the six families aren't as fast as you. Who are the other two? Zhou Wen asked. It's naturally Chancellor Leng and the Overseer. If not for them, how can the Luoyang and family remain standing? Even the six families have to fear them, and Xing said with a smile. Zhou Wen didn't ask what their companion beasts were. This was everyone's secret and trump card. After returning to his dorm, Zhou Wen couldn't wait to summon the six-winged guardian dragon in its companion form. 6 flaming dragon wings appeared on his back, but they were no longer black. Instead, they were wholly white. They looked much prettier, but he didn't know if their actual effects had changed. After putting away the dragon wings, Zhou Wen took out his phone and entered the Zhuolu Instance dungeon. He wanted to see if the current six-winged guardian dragon could fight Qiongqi. Torch Dragon had the bright torch vision world, allowing it to ignore strength and speed. However, Qiongqi was a dimensional creature that relied on strength and speed. Now that the six-winged guardian dragon's strength had greatly increased, it might be able to fight Qiongqi. He brought the six-winged guardian dragon into the temple where Qiongqi was. When the six-winged guardian dragon saw Qiongqi, its originally black body and black wings turned white, turning into a white dragon. This was likely its additional sanctification skill. In its sanctification state, the six-winged guardian dragon's speed and strength were still inferior to Qiongqi's. However, it could still barely put up a fight. It wasn't like before when it was completely crushed and had no ability to resist. The stronger the six-winged guardian dragon was, the more Zhou Wen found Qiongqi terrifying. Such a powerful six-winged guardian dragon was still suppressed by Qiongqi. The six-winged guardian dragon could still barely put up a fight. It wouldn't be killed in a short period of time, but the blood-colored avatar wasn't that lucky. Qiongqi suddenly attacked the blood-colored avatar. Zhou Wen controlled the blood-colored avatar to dodge twice before it was smacked to death by Qiongqi's claw. Something strange happened. The blood-colored avatar had clearly been struck, but it didn't die. Instead, the six-winged guardian dragon's body suddenly exploded and it died for no reason. With the death of the six-winged guardian dragon, the blood-colored avatar didn't last long before it was killed by Qiongqi. Could it be that the final life guardian is actually a miracle ability to die in place of its master? Zhou Wen guessed as he immediately restarted the dungeon and experimented a few more times. Indeed, it was as Zhou Wen had guessed. As long as the six-winged guardian dragon was still alive, it could help him block a death calamity. Furthermore, this ability could also be used in the form of dragon wings. This enhancement is just too good. Zhou Wen increasingly felt that his enhancement was the right choice. This way, it was equivalent to him having another life. Even if he were to die in the future, the six-winged guardian dragon could protect him once. It was better than any mythical creature. After all, he only had one life. No matter how many mythical creatures there were, it would be useless if Zhou Wen died. As Zhou Wen was studying the six-winged guardian dragon, the six families and some wealthy families were also studying it. There was even a dispute between the people of the East and West District. As the six-winged guardian dragon had appeared in Luoyang, The people of the East District naturally believed that it was owned by an expert of the East District. However, the people of the West District said that the six-winged guardian dragon was clearly a companion beast from the West District. It didn't exist in the East District, so the owner of the six-winged guardian dragon was definitely from the West District. It was just passing by Luoyang in passing. The various families were also guessing who the owner of the six-winged guardian dragon was. The most suspicious ones were naturally Leng Zongjing and Tianzhua. However, after many attempts and investigations, the two of them denied it. At the same time, the six families weren't idle. They were studying how the six-winged guardian dragon appeared on the cube and the meaning of its existence. Do you mean that the mythical six-winged guardian dragon belongs to Zhouwen? In the family, Tianzhua's expression turned complicated when he heard Sheng's report. Chapter 511. Yes. Back then, young Master Wen, Zhang Yuji, and I killed the six-winged guardian dragon together, but no companion egg dropped that time. Later, young Master Wen lured Medusa into fighting the six-winged guardian dragon, causing both of them to be injured, resulting in a companion egg dropping. Now that the six-winged guardian dragon has been enhanced, its combat strength is probably considered high among mythical creatures, Sheng said. That might not be the case. Wild mythical companion beasts are ultimately inferior to those that are nurtured, Tianzhua said. Sheng didn't retort him. All he did was say with a smile, "Overseer, you're right. However, no matter what, it's a powerful mythical creature. With it, young Master Wen can be considered a pillar of support for Luoyang." When did you degenerate to the point of relying on a student? When did my Luoyang degenerate to the point of relying on a student to be a pillar of support? Tianzhua glared at Sheng. There's nothing I can do about it. I also want to be a pillar of support, but I don't have a mythical pet, Sheng said as he spread out his hands. What's the rush? Isn't White Cloud Mountain in progress? Tianzhua said. Sheng said, I don't know if we can kill that mythical creature on White Cloud Mountain. Even if we can, it might not drop a companion egg. Overseer, none of the 3 or 4 mythical creatures you killed dropped a companion egg. That's because we were unlucky. The chance of a mythical creature dropping a companion egg is about 1/3. No matter what, it should drop this time. Tianzhua glared at him and continued, in short, we relied on ourselves in the past, and we still rely on ourselves now. We still have to rely on ourselves in the future. Don't place your hopes on others. Yes, Overseer. Sheng paused for a moment before asking, if young Master Wen wants to go to Zhuolu, should I stop him? Does he have the guts? The mythical creatures in Zhuolu aren't something ordinary mythical companion beasts can match. I don't think he has the guts to go. It's just luck that he obtained the six-winged guardian dragon. Do you really expect him to kill mythical creatures? Tianzhua said. Zhouwen was reading the news in his dorm. Many media outlets on his phone reported the appearance of the six-winged guardian dragon and the cube's ranking as headlines. Now, there was probably no one in the Federation who didn't know the six-winged guardian dragon. I wonder what the ranking of companion beasts is for? Zhouwen thought to himself. The Dharch didn't say what the ranking was for, nor did Zhouwen discover any use for it. However, he felt that it definitely wasn't that simple. Black cubes had appeared all over the world. Was such a big battle just to create a ranking that was of no practical use? Zhouwen felt that the terrifying existences in the dimensional zones weren't that boring. The ranking definitely had some use, but he just didn't know what it was. Zhouwen didn't grind dungeons today. He was considering how to kill Qiongqi or Torch Dragon. The six-winged guardian dragon could barely fight Qiongqi, but Zhouwen wasn't strong enough to dodge Qiongqi's attacks. Instead, he became a burden. Every time Qiongqi killed the blood-colored avatar, it was useless no matter how strong the six-winged guardian dragon was. If he wanted to kill Torch Dragon, he had to pass the bright torch vision world. The six-winged guardian dragon could already fight Torch Dragon head-on, but it couldn't block the bright torch vision world. Qiongqi is still more difficult to kill. I can only continue thinking of a solution from Torch Dragon. Zhouwen thought for a long time before he thought of a way to kill Torch Dragon. Torch Dragon's speed was much slower than Qiongqi's. The strengthened six-winged guardian dragon's speed had already exceeded Torch Dragon's. It was only because of the bright torch vision world that it couldn't defeat Torch Dragon. The crystal mirror that Zhouwen had obtained could restrain Torch Dragon, but it was too small. At most, it could only block his face. Furthermore, because Torch Dragon's eyes were too far apart, it was impossible to use the crystal mirror to block his line of sight. The size of the crystal mirror could only block one of its eyes at most. After some thought, Zhouwen realized that there was only one way to deal with Torch Dragon. It was to transform Six-Winged into dragon wings and increase Zhouwen's flying speed. Then, he could use his movement techniques and speed to avoid Torch Dragon's gaze with the bright torch vision world, preventing it from seeing him. Of course, it was impossible to completely dodge. After all, no matter how fast Zhouwen was, it was impossible for Torch Dragon to completely see him. However, with the crystal mirror, it shouldn't be difficult to block one of its eyes. This way, it would give Zhouwen enough space. However, this also required repeated combat tests. It wasn't something that could be done just by thinking about it. Planning was one aspect, but there were often many problems during the execution. He needed to try repeatedly. Now, the last problem left is how to kill Zhulong. After so many battles with Torch Dragon, Zhouwen realized that the toughness of Torch Dragon's body was even more terrifying than the six-winged guardian dragon's. The six-winged guardian dragon's attacks could only damage its scales. A small number of attacks were hardly of much use. The effects of Overlord Sword's sword beams on it weren't obvious. After some thought, Zhouwen realized that if he wanted to kill Torch Dragon, he had to rely on the Poison Dragon Palm or Demonic Neonate's ancient sword to launch a sneak attack. After roughly figuring out the steps to kill Torch Dragon, Zhouwen entered the temple again. Before looking for Torch Dragon, Zhouwen first put on the soft armor transformed from the epic Golden Warrior and the heavy armor transformed from the runic heavy-armored warrior. The six-winged guardian dragon appeared behind Zhouwen in its winged form. With the Truth Listener earring hanging on his ear, he held the Overlord sword in one hand and the banana fan in the other. At the same time, he summoned Demonic Neonate and got her to lie on the blood-colored avatar's back, waiting for any opportunity to launch a sneak attack. Now, the blood-colored avatar was dressed in heavy armor with black magma patterns. It had 3 pairs of holy dragon wings on its back. It had a huge sword in one hand and a banana fan in the other. It looked a little odd, but it also gave off a powerful feeling. However, Demonic Neonate, who was lying on his back, instantly made this domineering feeling disappear, leaving only 30% of it. Overall, it felt like a powerful male nanny. Taking a deep breath, Zhouwen opened the door to the temple and controlled the blood-colored avatar to rush in. Torch Dragon saw him at a glance. It opened its mouth and spat out a mouthful of black smoke that swept towards the blood-colored avatar like a rolling tide. The banana fan fanned a few times, and the Grand Een wind immediately blew the black smoke back. Before Torch Dragon could react, the 6 dragon wings on the blood-colored avatar's back flapped in unison. Immediately, the blood-colored avatar's body flashed behind Torch Dragon like a phantom. It slashed down at Torch Dragon's neck domineeringly. The sword beam spun violently as it slashed at Torch Dragon like a wheel of light. Torch Dragon's reaction wasn't slow either. It turned its head to look at the sword beam as a flame-like beam shot out from its eyes, shattering the sword beam. At the same time, it swung its tail, leaving behind afterimages as it lashed at the blood-colored avatar in midair at an unbelievable speed. The dragon wings flapped as ghost steps moved in midair, dodging Torch Dragon's tail strike. At the same time, the Overlord's sword swept out again, slashing at Torch Dragon's vitals. Chapter 512. Zhou Wen's figure flickered like a phantom as he moved around Torch Dragon. Sword beams constantly slashed out, but they were all neutralized by Torch Dragon. He failed to injure it. Zhou Wen wasn't in a hurry, but Torch Dragon couldn't hold it in any longer. A ripple-like power erupted from its body, radiating throughout the entire palace, leaving Zhou Wen with no room to dodge. Gripping the Overlord's sword tightly, he used Transcendent Flying Immortal. Sword beams slashed out and collided with the ripples. The sword beams and ripples shattered. There were just too many ripples, and Transcendent Flying Immortal couldn't slash them all. When the ripples struck Zhou Wen, he was immediately sent flying and slammed into a metal pillar in the palace. Zhou Wen realized that there were many holes in his armor, but his body wasn't injured. After the first layer of heavy armor was penetrated by the ripples, the soft armor inside was also damaged, but it failed to completely penetrate. This armor and soft armor are indeed useful. Zhou Wen couldn't help but be overjoyed. The double armor was able to block Torch Dragon's attack, and only caused him to suffer some shock damage. This was much better than he had expected. When Torch Dragon saw that the blood-colored avatar wasn't dead, a glint flashed in its eyes. This was a sign that it was about to use Bright Torch Vision World. Zhou Wen suddenly got up and activated Ghost Steps again. The 6 wings on his back flapped violently as he flashed behind Torch Dragon. Torch Dragon quickly turned its head and looked in Zhou Wen's direction. Its eyes had already turned into a mirror. No matter how fast Zhou Wen was, he wasn't as fast as it turning its head. Just as the corner of its eye was about to catch up to Zhou Wen flipped his hand and threw a crystal mirror at Torch Dragon's eye as he continued moving. He originally imagined that the crystal mirror could block Torch Dragon's line of sight, but to his surprise, Torch Dragon's head suddenly sped up. The crystal mirror's trajectory immediately missed its eye. The blood-colored avatar was immediately reflected in its eyes as the game screen turned black. Even 6-winged Guardian Dragon's life protection didn't work. The 6-winged Guardian Dragon exploded first, followed by the blood-colored avatar's death. Life protection was only a form of damage transfer. If Zhou Wen was injured, it would be transferred to it, but it couldn't allow Zhou Wen to leave Bright Torch Vision World. From the looks of it, I still need more practice to block Bright Torch Vision World. Zhou Wen wasn't discouraged. He dripped his blood to revive and continued grinding. He had long expected that it was impossible to succeed in one try. When scientists did research, they would fail tens of thousands of times before they could produce results. This was equivalent to an experiment. What he wanted wasn't luck, but a 100% chance of killing Torch Dragon. Without sufficient confidence, Zhou Wen wouldn't go to the temple in real life. That would be harming himself and others. Before fighting Torch Dragon, Zhou Wen first grinded the rare dimensional creatures. Sun Beast, the baby tiger, the elegant Emperor's puppet avatar, and so on. He grinded whatever he could. If a companion egg dropped, it would definitely be useful for future synthesis. Zhou Wen vaguely felt that if he could fuse some rare life providences, life souls and skills together, he might be able to fuse a pet that was even more ridiculous than a mythical pet. However, the difficulty of such a fusion was probably no easier than having a mythical pet drop. It would take countless attempts. On the Dead Man Tree, the flower that bloomed after Jack's death finally withered and produced a pea-sized fruit. It was unknown how long it would take for it to ripen. Tyrant Behemoth was constantly evolving. From the looks of it, it took more time to advance to the mythical stage than to the epic stage. Will this fellow really become as big as a mountain after advancing to the mythical stage? Zhou Wen was secretly worried. If it was really that big, there would be many dimensional zones that it wouldn't be able to enter. Zhou Wen was still grinding that day when Li Xian delivered the items Zhou Wen had asked him to buy. Apart from a chemical material, He had basically bought everything else on the list. There wasn't much time left until the deadline given by the Dharch. After Li Xian left, Zhou used the void flower to teleport the items over. Then, he sent the Dharch a message, explaining that the material wasn't easy to obtain and couldn't be bought in the nearby cities. If she really wanted it, she would have to wait a little longer. A month should be enough, right? I have to obtain that material. The Dharch replied. The Dharch, I spent a lot of money to buy these materials. I'm running out of money. Zhou continued complaining. It wasn't that he wanted to extort her, but he was afraid that the Dharch would think that it was easy for him to obtain the items. How could he have the time to buy things for her? Do you want to transform into a cat again? The skill crystal I gave you is a mythical skill crystal. You humans don't have many, right? You only bought a few things and you say you don't have money? Do you think I don't know the price? The Dharch quickly replied. Oh no. Zhou imagined that the Dharch was as easy to fool as before. He forgot that she could go online. He reckoned that her understanding of humans might be better than Zhou. The Dharch, although mythical skill crystals are precious, you know the current situation of humans. No one can use that item, so there's no way to value it. It's really not easy to sell it. That crystal is still in my hands. The money used to buy these things is all my savings. I really can't hold on any longer. Zhou was certain that the price of mythical crystals couldn't be found on the internet. What he said was true. That's true. You humans are too weak. You can't use good things. However, those are the worst things I have here. I don't have any lower-level trash. The message from the Dharch nearly made Zhou, who was drinking water, choke. How many treasures are there in Chess Mountain? Are mythical essence energy skill crystals trash? No, I have to think of a way to crack Chess Mountain in the future, Zhou thought to himself. After obtaining Six-Winged, Zhou indeed had the qualifications to challenge Chess Mountain in-game. Zhou should now have the strength to deal with the fake fairy in Deer Terrace Pavilion. However, there was more than one fake fairy inside. If 6 of them attacked together, Zhou didn't know if he could deal with them. Now that Zhou was focusing on attacking Torch Dragon, he didn't plan on going for the time being. The Dharch, if it's not convenient for you now, I'll sell everything I have to help you pay for it. Zhou sent a message. There's no need. Aren't you in the city not far from Chess Mountain? I'll tell you a place. Go there and look. You should be able to find something valuable. The Dharch was clearly not as petty as Zhou. Chapter 5:13. Where is it? Don't tell me it's inside Chess Mountain? Zhou asked warily. If the Dharch allowed him to enter Chess Mountain in reality, Zhou wouldn't go no matter what. That place was a huge pit. Zhou estimated that even if the 6 families brought all their mythical companion beasts, they might not be able to take down that place. The legendary ancient Chauga had many mythical creatures. Who knew if the mythical creatures that had helped ancient Chauga in battle were all inside? The 7 saints of Plum Mountain, the 4 generals of the Mo family, and so on were extremely terrifying existences even among mythical creatures. It was too easy for them to kill dragons. Zhou guessed that if he encountered them, he would probably be instantly killed even with the 6-winged guardian dragon by his side. Don't worry. It's not at Chess Mountain. I've seen your current map. That place is in Funyo Mountain, which is 50 kilometers away. Now, that place should be called White Cloud Mountain. The Dharch seemed to see through Zhou's thoughts. White Cloud Mountain is also a dimensional zone, right? Zhou had heard of White Cloud Mountain. White Cloud Mountain and Mount Laojun were both part of Funyo Mountain, but their locations were somewhat different. However, the nature of the two was completely different. Mount Laojun was relatively safe. As long as one didn't kill or step on any flowers or plants, there shouldn't be any danger to their lives. However, White Cloud Mountain was different. Ever since it mutated into a dimensional zone, the mountain range there had been enveloped by clouds. It was faintly discernible like a divine mountain. Zhouwen heard that few people who entered White Cloud Mountain came out alive. Occasionally, some people would come out alive, but they would die a baffling death a few days later. According to those who came out alive, White Cloud Mountain was shrouded in clouds, making it difficult to determine one's direction. Even their companions, who were just inches away, would disappear as they walked. They would never see them again, nor would their corpses be found. According to them, they had also seen an immortal palace on White Cloud Mountain. The immortal palace wasn't built on the mountain, but in the clouds. It had a jade foundation and a golden roof. There were fairies flying between the jade buildings. Without exception, the people who saw the immortal palace all died in the end. No one could survive. Even those who escaped from White Cloud Mountain died a few days after returning. Moreover, when they died, they all had a happy smile on their faces. That was why White Cloud Mountain was also known as the Immortal Ascension Mountain. Those who went there would have their lives taken away by immortals. They would then ascend to immortal palaces to enjoy life. Zhouwen didn't know if they enjoyed it, but he didn't wish to die. What valuable things can there be in a place that isn't a dimensional zone? On the southeast peak of White Cloud Mountain, there's a strange rock that looks like a rabbit. The good stuff is beneath that strange rock. The Dharch sent a message. I heard that White Cloud Mountain is horrifying. People who go there die a violent death. I'm afraid that I won't be able to return alive, Zhouwen said. Anyway, I've already told you where the item is. It's up to you whether you want to go or not. Regardless of whether you go or not, don't say that you don't have money in the future, the Dharch said. Does the Dharch have a way to enter White Cloud Mountain? Zhouwen asked. If you enter with your eyes closed and don't look at anything, you'll naturally be fine, the Dharch said. But how can I find that strange stone with my eyes closed? Zhouwen asked. That thing on your earring, is it just for show? Go if you want. Don't bother me. I'm busy, the Dharch replied disdainfully. Zhouwen was depressed. The Dharch even knew about Truth Listener's abilities. From the looks of it, he couldn't fool her. Zhouwen went online to check the information on White Cloud Mountain and really found the place the Dharch had mentioned. That place was rather famous on White Cloud Mountain. In the past, before the dimensional transformation, it was a scenic spot called Jade Rabbit Moon Worship. Legend had it that Jade Rabbit had descended to the mortal world to play on White Cloud Mountain. Due to the outstanding scenery of White Cloud Mountain, Jade Rabbit had missed the time to return to the Moon Palace. All it could do was watch the moon rise from the east, unable to return. Therefore, Jade Rabbit lay on the mountain peak and prayed to the east every day, hoping that the Moon Palace fairy could bring it back to the Moon Palace. That was only a legend. After the dimensional transformation, no one knew what it looked like, nor did they know if the Moon Rabbit Stone was still there. The Dharch said that as long as I don't open my eyes, I'll be fine. This is very beneficial to me. Zhouwen considered heading to White Cloud Mountain to take a look. The Dharch had casually given him a mythical essence energy skill crystal. Zhouwen felt that something that caught her eye and she remembered was definitely extraordinary. Since he had nothing to do in school, Zhouwen decided to head to White Cloud Mountain to take a look. After all, he could still game and grind dungeons on the way. It wouldn't delay anything. The chick and antelope could only be left with Wang Lu. Although Zhouwen wanted Li Xian to take care of them, this fellow was currently cultivating at a level that exceeded Zhouwen's. He didn't have the time to take care of the two fellows. As for taking them to White Cloud Mountain, it was definitely impossible. If the chick opened its eyes and saw the Immortal Palace, it would be dead. Zhouwen was counting on it to be a fighter when it grew up. He couldn't let it take risks so easily. Why has little Feifei become so thin after being raised by you for 2 days? Did you mistreat it? Wang Lu rolled her eyes at Zhouwen when she saw the thin chick. How would I dare mistreat it? I provide it with good food and drink all day. It eats better than me. Zhouwen actually found it odd. The chick was strangely thin. After a trip to Mount Laojun, it had lost weight. Zhouwen suspected that it was the antelope's doing. Back when he was gaming in front of the wordless monument, the antelope had taken it to the top of Mount Laojun. After coming down, it seemed to have lost weight. He had no idea what the two of them had done up there. "You owe me many lunches and dinners. If this continues, I'm afraid you won't be able to repay me by the time I graduate." Wang Lu seriously recorded the amount of time Zhouwen needed to be fostered in her diary so that she could settle the score with him later. "I'll slowly repay you. I'll be able to repay you eventually." Zhouwen had no choice. These two fellows were dimensional creatures. Zhouwen really couldn't be at ease leaving them to ordinary people to raise. He was afraid that they would cause trouble. After returning to his dorm, Zhouwen called in Xing, hoping to get him to help him apply for a few days of leave. If he left school for a long time, the procedures would be more complicated. Although White Cloud Mountain wasn't far, he didn't know when he would be able to come out once he entered a dimensional zone. "That's not a problem. I'll get you a pass. You can enter and exit school freely when you return. There's no need to go through the trouble of applying for leave every time," Xing said. "There's such a pass?" Zhouwen was somewhat surprised. "It's usually for graduate students. According to the rules, ordinary university students can't apply for a pass, but you are naturally an exception, young Master One. By the way, young Master One, where do you plan on going this time?" And Xing asked. "I want to go to White Cloud Mountain to take a look." Zhouwen and Xing had experienced life and death, so there was naturally no need to hide it. Chapter 514. Why are you going to White Cloud Mountain? And Xing was somewhat surprised. "I heard that the dimensional zone there is rather interesting. I want to take a look." Zhouwen naturally couldn't say that he had listened to the Dharch and wanted to dig for treasures. "White Cloud Mountain is too dangerous. We have been setting up there for a few years, but we have yet to reach Jade Emperor Peak. If you really want to go to White Cloud Mountain, you have to remember not to open your eyes after entering White Cloud Mountain. Otherwise, once you see a mirage like an immortal palace, even a mythical companion beast won't be able to save you," and Xing said solemnly. "Why can't I open my eyes?" Zhouwen already knew of this taboo, but he never expected Xing and company to already know of it. "I don't know. It's just like small Buddha temple. It's unreasonable. As long as you open your eyes and see it, you will definitely die. There's no reason." And Xing paused for a moment before saying, "There's also Jade Emperor Peak. You can't go there either. Even if you close your eyes, you will still be injured by the strange taboo power there. It's a place where there's no way out." "I got it. I'm just going to take a look. It's not certain if I can enter the mountain." Zhouwen asked for some more details and learned that Xing and company had a deep understanding of White Cloud Mountain. Apart from Jade Emperor Peak, they had mostly figured out the other places. Zhouwen knew that to have such a deep understanding of White Cloud Mountain, sacrifices were inevitable. They weren't like Zhouwen, who had the mysterious phone to explore without any qualms. Even if the people who entered were epic experts, the strangeness of dimensional zones was impossible to guard against. Once an unknown accident happened, epic experts could easily die. Zhouwen planned on taking a look first. If he could find the tiny palm symbol, he wouldn't go up the mountain. He would use the tiny palm symbol to download White Cloud Mountain and use his phone to investigate it before heading up. After talking about White Cloud Mountain, Zhouwen hesitated for a moment before asking, "How's the progress at Zhuelu?" "I knew that after you obtained the six-winged guardian dragon, you would definitely target that place. I can tell you with certainty that you will only be sending yourself to your death if you bring the six-winged guardian dragon there." And Xing told Zhouwen about some of the things they had recently explored. Zhouwen was somewhat surprised that the experts could determine that the mythical creatures in the temple were Torch Dragon and Qiongqi. However, they could only determine their names. They didn't have the ability to attack the temple. Their understanding of Torch Dragon and Cheongchi was far inferior to Zhou. They didn't even know what abilities Torch Dragon and Cheongchi had. From the looks of it, I can only rely on myself on this trip to the temple, Zhou. Since you want to go to White Cloud Mountain, wait another 2 days. I'll be going to White Cloud Mountain in 2 days. I'll take you with me, Anxing said. Zhou wasn't in a rush to go. He felt that it was good to go with Anxing. After all, they had already explored the place where the Jade Rabbit and Moon Worship was. If he couldn't find the tiny palm symbol, he could get Anxing to bring him up. It was much better than him randomly going up. After setting a time with Anxing, the two of them ended the call. Zhou picked up his phone and continued grinding. Since he was leaving in 2 days, he couldn't be bothered to retrieve the chick and antelope. He decided to leave them at Wang Lu's place. After all, they were happy to follow Wang Lu. It was better to eat and drink well there than with Zhou. After repeatedly grinding dungeons, Zhou killed a large number of musical note sprites. Now there were more than 1,000 of the 7 musical note sprites. Summoning them together and using the golden harp to attack together, the sound waves produced could break through the defense of a runic heavy-armored warrior. However, it was still far from being able to fight a mythical creature. Zhou estimated that the number of musical note sprites needed at least 10,000 to produce a sound wave attack that could compare to an unenhanced 6-winged. Zhou wasn't in a hurry. Since he had to grind the Sun Beast, he could grind the musical note sprites along the way. He could obtain some musical note sprite companion eggs every time. Unfortunately, in the music temple, Goldfish didn't have the luck attribute, so he could only augment himself with the baby tiger. As usual, Zhou arrived at the music fountain square again. To Zhou's surprise, he saw the golden harp again. He had come to the music fountain square many times, but other than the first time, he didn't discover the golden harp again. Zhou imagined that the golden harp wouldn't appear again, but he never expected to see it again. Zhou was overjoyed as he immediately ordered the 6-winged guardian dragon to charge forward. Indeed, the golden harp used its ability to make the hundreds of thousands of musical note sprites release sound waves with it, forming a huge sound wave attack. The present 6-winged guardian dragon was no longer the 6-winged of the past. It unleashed its full strength and 6 wings appeared at the same time. Its body also turned white as it blasted through the sound wave attack and charged in front of the golden harp. It shattered the golden harp with a slap. The 6-winged guardian dragon has indeed become much stronger. Zhou wasn't very happy. Even the combined forces of more than 100,000 musical note sprites couldn't stop the 6-winged guardian dragon. If he wanted to form a musical note sprite army, he would probably need to obtain at least a few 100,000 musical note sprite companion beasts to play a decisive role in a battle with a mythical creature. The golden harp didn't drop a companion egg, but a rare spatial crystal dropped. Spatial stat +3. This gave Zhou another rare stat. It was just that 3 points was a little lacking. In the past 2 days, Zhou had been grinding dungeons at home. He had killed quite a number of runic heavy-armored warriors and golden warriors, but the companion eggs of the baby tiger and the elegant emperor puppet had never dropped. Zhou could understand why the baby tiger's companion egg was difficult to drop, but he never expected the elegant emperor puppet's companion egg to be so difficult to drop. Furthermore, skill crystals rarely dropped. Apart from the first time Zhou obtained the substitute talisman skill, he hadn't dropped a second skill crystal. Early in the morning, Anxing called and informed Zhou to head to White Cloud Mountain. Zhou packed his things and brought along the substitute talisman he had successfully drawn. When he arrived outside the school and saw Anxing's car, he walked to the window and realized that Tianzuo was sitting in the back seat. He couldn't help but be slightly taken aback. Why didn't Xing tell me that Tianzuo would be going as well? Zhou found it odd, but he couldn't say anything. All he could do was open the passenger door and sit in. Zhouwen had taken this car many times in the past, but when he sat in it today, he found it odd. The atmosphere in the car was somewhat amiss, and Tianzua's gaze was somewhat odd. Clearly, he didn't know that Zhouwen was going to White Cloud Mountain. Chapter 5:15. Young Master Wen, we're going to White Cloud Mountain's Red Birch Forest to hunt a mythical creature. Are you interested in joining us? And Xing said as he drove. Kill a mythical creature? Zhouwen was somewhat surprised. This was the first time he had heard of someone hunting a mythical creature. And Xing said, that's right. There's a strange mythical creature in Red Birch Forest. We've been investigating it for several years. We've already investigated most of its information. We're quite confident this time. Since you're going to White Cloud Mountain, why don't you join us? You can also gain some experience. I'm fine. Zhouwen believed in Xing's words. After all, they were hunting mythical creatures in real life. It was more dangerous, so they definitely made more preparations. They definitely wouldn't risk their lives. Furthermore, even Tianzua had been mobilized this time, so there shouldn't be too many problems. However, Zhouwen didn't wish to have too much contact with Tianzua. He felt that they weren't on the same wavelength. However, and Xing continued, I still don't know what the mythical creature in Red Birch Forest is called. We named it Love Letter. It's rather interesting. The overseer said that if a companion egg drops this time, it will belong to me. Perhaps I'll have a mythical companion beast in the future. Love Letter? Why would there be such a name? Zhouwen was somewhat surprised. There's a little story behind it. Legend has it that the bark of the red birch is very thin and easy to peel off. Furthermore, it's very beautiful. Some people will use the bark of the red birch to write love letters for their sweethearts. Although the dimensional creature in Red Birch Forest doesn't look like a book, the skills it uses are all related to word. It's rather difficult to deal with. We've lost count of how many companion beasts have died in Red Birch Forest over the past few years before we roughly understood its various skills. And Xing explained quite a bit about the mythical dimensional creature's abilities before saying, however, to kill a mythical creature, even if you know its abilities, it's impossible without the same mythical strength. Therefore, I'll need the overseer to personally take action this time. Otherwise, I won't be able to handle it myself. If you go with me, I'll be even more at ease. It'll be a good story if 2 experts from Luoyang help me kill a dimensional creature. Zhouwen really didn't wish to have any romantic stories with Tianzua, but it wasn't appropriate for him to say something uncultured. All he could do was remain silent. The mountain roads are dangerous. Drive carefully, and Tianzua, who was resting with his eyes closed, said coldly. Yes. And Xing responded and didn't dare say another word. He secretly blinked his sleepy eyes at Zhouwen before focusing on driving. Zhouwen had no interest in speaking. Just as he was about to close his eyes to rest, he suddenly heard his phone ring. Zhouwen answered the call when he saw that it was from Huang Ji. Zhouwen, our game succeeded. Huang Ji's interested voice sounded. It was so loud that even Xing and Tianzua heard it. After the previous trial run, Zhouwen didn't have much anticipation for Huang Ji's game. However, he still pretended to be interested and said, That's great. Can you send me a copy? I can't wait to try it out. Of course not. I've already posted it online for closed beta testing. Go to this website and download it. Give me some suggestions after you play it. Huang Ji quickly sent a website to Zhouwen. Zhouwen opened the website and saw that it was a gaming website. There were many closed and open beta games on it. Their game was called Dimension. Zhouwen saw this game at the top. It wasn't because Huang Ji had spent money that his ranking was high, but because Huang Ji had just uploaded it. That was why it appeared at the top. Zhouwen hurriedly downloaded the game. Thankfully, this wasn't within the range of a dimensional zone. Otherwise, it would be hard to say if there was any signal. They had just arrived in the suburbs, so the signal wasn't bad. After a while, Zhou finished downloading the game and started it. He realized that although the login interface was very simple, it wasn't bad. It looked quite pleasing to the eye. After entering the game, there was only one option: Tiger Cage Pass. Zhou chose Tiger Cage Pass and couldn't help but be alarmed when he entered the game. He originally imagined that the game Huang Ji had created was at the level of a horizontal arcade game, but now it was worlds apart from when he tried it. Although it was still a horizontal mode, be it the NPCs or the exquisiteness of the scenery, they had greatly improved. There were only two characters to choose from, a man and a woman. After choosing the man, there wasn't a skill selection interface like before. Instead, he entered a game tutorial interface. It introduced the game's operation and skill usage. Apart from the direction key, there were 5 other keys in the game. Then, using the direction key and the other 5 keys, using different key combinations, one could release different skills. At present, there were 10 built-in skills. After memorizing the release method, one could use the skills they needed. You've done well. Zhou felt that this was a pleasant surprise. He tried the controls and found them surprisingly smooth. It was similar to the fighting games that were very popular in the past. The controls and impact were rather good. After entering the game, Tiger Cage Pass turned into a black and white ink style. The demonized soldiers were also in the same style. It looked surprisingly exciting. Zhou controlled the in-game character to kill the demonized soldiers in Tiger Cage Pass, and realized that the various moves and attack patterns of the demonized soldiers were very similar to real demonized soldiers. They were much more flexible than when he tried them out. It was rather difficult. It's really possible. After playing for a while, Zhou became more and more astonished. This was too different from what he had imagined. It was surprisingly good. Although he might not be able to kill demonized soldiers after playing the game, he could completely familiarize himself with the various attack methods of the demonized soldiers in-game. He knew how to deal with them when he really encountered them. To rookies who had never entered Tiger Cage Pass, it was still quite helpful. It was much better than simply watching videos to learn. Zhou cleared all the obstacles and killed quite a number of demonized soldiers. The controls weren't a problem for him at all. All he needed to do was look at the controls and release all sorts of skills smoothly. It was very easy for him to kill demonized soldiers. Soon, Zhou discovered a mini-boss, the demonized general. After an intense battle with the demonized general, he increasingly felt that the game wasn't bad. The various behaviors and skills of the demonized general were done very well. It was similar to a real demonized general. Zhou kept gaming. And Tianzhua, who was behind him, had his eyes closed in the beginning. When he heard that Zhou had been gaming for more than half an hour, he couldn't help but open his eyes and frown. And Tianzhua clearly didn't like Zhou, who gamed all day. From his point of view, it was distracting. When he saw Tianzhua frown from the rearview mirror, he knew that things were bad. Hence, he rushed to say, "Young Master One, I heard that you and your classmates worked together to create a game to popularize the various abilities of dimensional creatures. Is this it?" "Yes. I just completed the production. It has just been uploaded for closed beta. This is only my first time playing it. Currently, there's only one Tiger Cage Pass dungeon. The game has demonized soldiers and monsters as monsters. Through playing the game, one can learn the behavior patterns and various skills of the demonized soldiers and monsters. Learning how to deal with them in-game can also be used in real life. However, a game is a game after all. One still needs to practice all sorts of skills in actual combat," Zhou introduced. "That's not bad. Overseer, why don't you play the game created by Zhou and company? If it's feasible, it might be helpful in understanding dimensional creatures. Perhaps it can be promoted," Anxing said. "A game is just a game after all. If I have the time to play games, I might as well watch more videos." and Tianzhua closed his eyes again and continued resting. Chapter 5:16. After arriving at the White Cloud Mountain encampment, the person in charge led Tianzhua, Sheng, and Zhou Wen to White Cloud Mountain. As Tianzhua didn't have much time to stay here, he had to rush back regardless of whether he could kill the mythical creature today. Zhou Wen looked at White Cloud Mountain from afar and saw clouds swirling around it. The mountain was faintly discernible. Indeed, it was like a mythical immortal mountain. There were many red birch forests. The place where the mythical creature was at the foot of White Cloud Mountain. There was no need to climb the mountain. However, that was also within the range of White Cloud Mountain. There was a certain chance of seeing the phenomenon of an immortal palace appear in the clouds. If we continue forward, we might encounter an immortal palace illusion. Where this? And Xing handed a balaclava-like item to Zhou Wen. The helmet was made of chemical fibers mixed with metal wires. It didn't affect one's breathing after wearing it, but one's vision was blocked. It was impossible to see anything outside. No matter what you hear or what happens, don't take off the balaclava. After Sheng exhorted Zhou Wen, he put on the balaclava himself, and Tianzhua and the other officers who had come from the encampment also wore balaclavas. They had their own method. Some relied on special companion beasts for vision, while others relied on hearing. Some rode their mounts and let them replace their eyes. And Sheng summoned a strange companion beast. The companion beast was like a huge eyeball with wings. The huge eyeball flew beside Sheng, and Sheng seemed to be able to see his surroundings through it. It was no different from normal. And Tianzhua didn't summon his companion beast, nor did he know when he used it. However, the balaclava didn't seem to affect his vision as he continued moving freely. Zhou Wen had truth listener, so he wasn't affected. Under the lead of an officer riding a companion beast, the group headed deep into the red birch forest. White Cloud Mountain was mysterious and unfathomable, but there weren't many dimensional creatures here. However, every dimensional creature that appeared here was extremely terrifying. They were at least epic creatures. It was said that the red birch forest was very beautiful, but he could only hear it. He couldn't see the colors, so he didn't find it beautiful. Overseer, the Earth Listener beast has reacted. Love letter should be not far ahead, an officer riding a companion beast suddenly said. Prepare for battle, Tianzhua ordered. Apart from Zhou Wen, everyone began to prepare for battle. After advancing for a short while, Zhou Wen heard that a dimensional creature had appeared ahead. The dimensional creature looked very strange. It looked like a large scorpion, but it had transparent wings on its back. It was huge and longer than an adult. Unfortunately, Zhou Wen could only hear it and couldn't see its color. Otherwise, he would have discovered many strange things. The large scorpion was as white as jade, but there were many blood-colored patterns on its body. If one looked closely, they would see that those blood-colored patterns were strange characters and symbols. When Zhou Wen and company discovered the strange scorpion, it had already discovered them. It curled its tail, and the stinger on its tail immediately emitted a blood-colored glow, condensing a strange blood-colored incantation pattern. The incantation pattern was completely condensed from light and looked very magical. Zhou Wen had heard from Sheng that this fellow could produce many kinds of text-like abilities. This was likely one of them, but Zhou Wen didn't know which one it was. While Zhou Wen was pondering over it, Sheng and company had already begun preparing for battle. However, to Zhou Wen's surprise, the blood runes on the scorpion's tail didn't shoot at Zhou Wen and company. Instead, its tail stabbed into the ground and the blood runes fused into the ground, vanishing instantly. In an instant, Zhou Wen saw the ground around him suffuse a blood-colored glow. The soil seemed to be penetrated by the sanguine light as it emitted a glowing red glow. The red lights varied in strength, making Zhou Wen think that he was in a huge light array. The officers were clearly prepared. The companion beast beneath an officer suddenly raised its hooves and condensed a holy white light before stepping on the ground. The holy light immediately spread out across the ground, concealing the red light below, allowing the small area where Zhou and company were standing to remain unaffected by the red light. As for the large area affected by the red light, a strange phenomenon happened. It was as though everything had slowed down. The wind blew through the red birch forest, and the rustling forest seemed to be playing in slow motion. As the leaves swayed, it became extremely slow. This is its slow text. If we don't have the corresponding power to restrain it, our speed will drop drastically. When the time comes, it will be impossible to dodge its attack, much less kill it. We will be killed directly, Ansheng said. As though realizing that the slow text was useless against them, the blood-colored patterns on the scorpion-like mythical creature's back flickered, transforming into blood-colored text that rushed out. The blood-colored text wasn't aimed at Zhou and company, but at a red birch tree. When the blood-colored text hit the red birch tree, it vanished in a flash as though it had drilled into the red birch tree. In the next second, the red birch tree rapidly withered. In the blink of an eye, it turned into withered wood. As for the blood-colored text, it flew out of the withered wood again. However, this time, the blood-colored text had clearly changed. Its shape had changed, and the sanguine light had become stronger. The blood-colored text floated above the scorpion, emitting a red light. Wherever the red light shone, all the red birch trees seemed to come alive. Their roots tore out of the ground as their branches swayed. They swept towards Zhou and company as though they had become tree demons. An icy light shimmered on the back of an officer as an ice fox-like life soul appeared. The icy light on the life soul's body erupted, freezing the nearby demonized red birch trees. And Ansheng didn't have the time to explain to Zhou. The scorpion's body emitted a sanguine glow as red text flew out from its body. They transformed into blood-colored beams that attacked Zhou and company. And Ansheng and a few officers resisted the blood-colored beams together. And Tianzhuo watched from the side without any intention of taking action. Zhou could roughly tell that the scorpion's strength was about the same as an unenhanced six-winged, but its abilities were rather strange. The blood-colored text it produced had many functions. Apart from the few he had seen previously, it could also transform into wind, fire, lightning, and other powers. If one encountered it for the first time, or if they weren't strong enough, they would easily be killed by it. However, Ansheng and company had studied it for several years and had already thought of ways to restrain its various powers. No matter how it changed its skills, they could barely resolve it. However, they could only resolve it. Up to now, Zhou hadn't figured out how they could kill the scorpion. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.